Chapter 55. Not a pregnancy pulse? Jiyu Beiyu was a little surprised and patiently waited for Han Yunshi to continue. But there is indeed a life in the stomach, Han Yunshi said directly. Since it was not a pregnancy pulse and there was a life in the stomach, what was going on? Jiyu Beiyu frowned slightly and did not say anything, waiting for Han Yunshi to continue. However, Han Yunshi's face became serious. I will only tell you the results of the diagnosis. Are you willing to know? Jiyu Beiyu was shocked. What is going on? I need your help, but you have to keep it a secret, Han Yunshi said again. Jiyu Beiyu nodded without hesitation. Perhaps even he did not know why he trusted Han Yunshi so much. Other than Jiyu Beiyu, Han Yunshi really could not find a second person she could trust. This secret was too scary. In the modern era, even modern people might not be able to accept it, let alone ancient people. She said in a low voice, the Crown Prince's illness is called fetus in fetus. Strictly speaking, the child in his stomach is the Empress's. When these words came out, the usually calm Jiyu Beiyu took 2 steps back and revealed a shocked expression. However, he quickly calmed down. Qin Wangfei, you can't say such things carelessly. Han Yunshi was helpless and wanted to laugh. She had once again broken this guy's calmness under his gentleness. She smiled faintly. I know. Listen to my explanation first. Jiyu Beiyu then came closer and nodded. When the Empress was pregnant with the Crown Prince, she was actually pregnant with 2 children. However, before the child was formed, the Crown Prince wrapped the other child in his body. To be exact, a fetus in fetus was a parasitic fetus. It meant that when twin embryos were developing, one embryo was wrapped in the other embryo and stayed in the baby's body. It grew with the baby, absorbed the baby's nutrients, and developed abnormally. Under different circumstances, some fetus in the womb developed quickly and would be discovered early. However, some fetus in the womb developed slowly and would only be discovered after many years. The longest recorded case in the history of medicine was 32 years. Long Tianmo was not even 20 years old this year, so it was not a long time. Jiyu Beiyu didn't know anything about cells or embryos. Han Yunshi could only explain it to him in the simplest terms. That is to say, the Empress was pregnant with twins, but before the fetus was formed, one of the Crown Princes wrapped the other child in his body. Later, the Crown Prince was formed and born, and the other life was left in his body. It relied on the nutrients in his blood to sustain itself and gradually grew up. Jiyu Beiyu finally understood. He shook his head in disbelief. I didn't expect something like this to happen. Of course, he didn't believe that men could give birth to children. But after so many years, although he didn't participate in the Crown Prince's treatment, he had flipped through medical books to study this case. Although he was very shocked by Han Yunshi's explanation, in his view, Han Yunshi's explanation was reasonable. Jiyu Beiyu was silent. Suddenly, he raised his head to look at Han Yunshi. His gaze was grave as he said seriously, this life cannot be taken. Although it has been said for so many years that it is a pregnancy pulse, the Emperor is not willing to believe it. Han Yunshi naturally knew that this life could not be taken. Otherwise, she wouldn't have kept it a secret and made up some nonsense about abdominal sarcoma. A fetus in the womb was basically not a normal and healthy child. Some only had 4 limbs and no heart or brain. This was a life that wouldn't live for long even if it was saved. Not to mention this, even if it was a complete and healthy child, it was also not to be taken. How could the Crown Prince have a child? If a child was really born, anyone who knew of this matter would definitely be silenced, including the Crown Prince and this child. If this matter was spread, the Imperial Long Clan would be accused of being Yao. It would give those restless rebel factions enough excuse to incite the people. Of course, Han Yunshi didn't care about that much. She only knew that she couldn't tell the truth. Moreover, she had to save this person in order to live. Seeing Jiyu Beiyu's grave gaze, Han Yunshi's voice became cold, so, I have to nip it in the bud. Your father has prescribed a lot of abortion pills, but none of them have any effect. Jiyu Beiyu seriously reminded. Han Yunshi's lips curled in disdain, of course his pills won't be effective. Abortion pills are for women. The pills that Han Kong'an prescribed were only effective for pregnant women. Strictly speaking, Long Tianmo wasn't pregnant. How could it be effective? I need a type of poison to dissolve the thing in the Crown Prince's stomach into blood water. Then I'll expel the poison from his body. The Emperor and the rest will only see poison water. The Crown Prince isn't pregnant, but has a malignant tumor. Han Yunxi's tone was very certain. Hearing this, Jiyu Beiyu was silent for a moment before giving a thumbs up. Without a doubt, Han Yunxi's method was the most appropriate. Not only did it protect herself, it also kept this secret forever. People who didn't know the truth would never have a knot in their heart. His Highness the Crown Prince should thank you. Jiyu Beiyu smiled. Han Yunxi helplessly shrugged. I just hope that his imperial mother won't make trouble for me in the future. Jiyu Beiyu knew that poison wasn't difficult for Han Yunxi. Why did this woman need his help? You need me. Jiyu Beiyu hesitated. Han Yunxi's resolute gaze suddenly dimmed. That thing's extremely large. This incision will be at least 10 times harder than the one with the young general. It's very possible that the Crown Prince will die from excessive blood loss before even half of the blood is drained out. The medicine Han Yunxi had prepared for the Crown Prince was actually poison. She could use the poison to dissolve the thing in his abdomen so that she could create a medicine with precise effects that wouldn't harm the organs. It would only dissolve the thing into blood and water. This way, the blood would be poisonous and had to be expelled immediately. Right now, her biggest problem was excessive blood loss. She had to have enough time to expel the poison. In the modern era, a blood transfusion would be enough. But right now, she could only place her hopes on Jiyu Beiyu. Jiyu Beiyu understood as soon as he heard the question. He looked at Han Yunxi, a complicated look in his eyes. It was a long time before he spoke. I know of a medicine called the lifeblood pill. After taking it, it'll have the effect of creating blood for a short period of time. Before he could finish, Han Yunxi was pleasantly surprised. Where is this medicine? Seeing her anxious expression, Jiyu Beiyu's eyes flashed with doting. Qin Wangfei, this medicine isn't easy to get. The imperial clan has plenty of money and power. What's there to be afraid of? Han Yunxi blurted out. All right, in her heart, the imperial clan was a bunch of nouveau riche and bandits. Jiyu Beiyu felt even more helpless as he murmured, Qin Wangfei, in Cloud Realm Continent, Tianning's imperial clan is just one of many powers. Han Yunxi naturally knew that Cloud Realm Continent was huge and filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. But right now, she was most concerned about the whereabouts of the lifeblood pill. With it, treating the Crown Prince's condition would be a matter of minutes. Then tell me, just who has it? Han Yunxi grew anxious. Jiyu Beiyu only gave her 3 words. Jiyu Qi Sho. Jiyu Qi Sho? Han Yunxi seemed to have heard of this famous name somewhere in the depths of her memories. She muttered, that ghost genius Jiyu Qi Sho who was banished from Cloud Realm Medical Academy? Jiyu Beiyu nodded. Exactly. That fellow was born a ghost genius and had a gift for growing medicinal plants. Many of the commonly used plants today were grafted on by him when he was young. People call him the Pill Fiend. I heard he's the adopted son of an elder from the medical academy and grew up eating medicinal plants for his 3 meals? Han Yunxi asked curiously. Jiyu Beiyu nodded. That was all he knew. Although his grandfather was a director of the medical academy, he was a level lower than an elder. He had no way of getting in touch with the people above him, and he hadn't stayed long at the academy before following his grandfather to Tianning's capital city. Then where's Jiyu Qi Sho now? Han Yunxi asked hastily. After he was banished from the medical academy, he set up his own shop and founded the Medicine Ghost Valley. His specialty is to collect and cultivate all sorts of miraculous pills and medicines. He buys and sells them based on his mood, so it's no easy task to buy the lifeblood pill from him, Jiyu Beiyu said. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi's expression was relaxed. I thought you'd have to put in a lot of effort, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. A single medicinal pills is all it takes. Those medicinal pills aren't easy to get. Jiyu Beiyu had to remind her once more. Han Yunxi chuckled. I'm only responsible for writing out the prescription. I'm not responsible for finding the medicine. This, seeing Han Yunxi's sly smile, Jiyu Beiyu finally understood what she meant. As long as she wrote out the prescription, the emperor would naturally find a way to get his hands on the lifeblood pill. If he couldn't get his hands on it, then it couldn't be blamed on the two of them, the doctors. Han Yunxi immediately went to the desk and wrote down the medicinal ingredients and their quantities. Jiyu Beiyu was naturally curious, so he looked at her seriously from the side. However, the more he looked, the more he didn't understand. He recognized all the medicinal ingredients on the prescription, but unfortunately, he couldn't understand what they were used for. To use poison to dissolve the thing in the crown prince's abdomen without harming his internal organs, the amount of effort needed to put in the medicine wasn't just ordinary. Very quickly, Han Yunxi finished writing out the prescription and wrote the lifeblood pill at the end. Qin Wangfei, this prescription, is it complete? Jiyu Beiyu asked suspiciously. Han Yunxi looked at him meaningfully. It's a secret. Of course, this prescription wasn't complete. Moreover, no matter who got their hands on it, they wouldn't be able to tell that it was a poison because the three most important ingredients weren't written on it. The prescription was just a formality. She had the antidote in her detox system long ago. Han Yunxi had to hold back a trick or two. If she wrote down the real prescription and it fell into the hands of an expert one day, wouldn't they be able to use it against her and see the truth behind her treatment of the crown prince? Jiyu Beiyu looked at Han Yunxi's mysterious appearance and didn't ask further, but the fondness in his eyes deepened. With the lifeblood pill, Han Yunxi's biggest problem was solved. She almost couldn't wait to become the crown prince's savior and see how the Empress Dowager and Empress would react. Of course, she was looking forward to Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru's reactions even more. Right now, they had to be waiting anxiously at the Duke of Qin's estate. Millimeter, she had to get the lifeblood pill first. Hurry and go, we have to hand over the prescription. Han Yunxi tugged on Jiyu Beiyu's arm and prepared to leave. Jiyu Beiyu gave a start and hesitated for a second before pushing her aside. He didn't say a word, but Han Yunxi gave a start before unconsciously looking back. Jiyu Beiyu immediately avoided her gaze. This guy, Han Yunxi burst into laughter, but didn't explain. All right, she was so happy that she'd forgotten that this was ancient times and that she was a married woman. Male best friends and whatnot weren't allowed. Cough, cough. She coughed lightly as if nothing had happened and turned back. My hands were quick, I wasn't trying to molest you. Jiyu Beiyu was about to leave when he gave a start. But soon enough, a gentle smile bloomed on his face. Han Yunxi didn't know that she'd missed the most beautiful smile in the world. Chapter 56. Han Yunxi presented the prescription to Emperor Tianhui and told him the importance of the lifeblood pill. She secretly calculated that no matter how Emperor Tianhui begged for the medicine, it'd take at least 10 days to half a month. During this time, she could return to the Duke of Qin's estate and stay put. With such a heavy responsibility on her shoulders, she'd like to see what Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru could do to her. Moreover, she could use Imperial Physician Jiyu as an excuse to enter and leave the Imperial Physician Courtyard as she pleased. The Imperial Physician Courtyard had plenty of medical books and medicinal ingredients. To her, this place was simply a treasure trove. Han Yunxi exhaled in relief after handing over the prescription, but who knew? Emperor Tianhui set down the prescription and looked towards Long Fei Yi. Duke of Qin, Medicine Ghost Valley isn't an ordinary place. You should make a trip there yourself. Although he spoke in a tone of discussion, everyone knew this was an imperial order. Long Fei Yi's face was still as cold as ever as he nodded. Yes. Han Yunxi glanced at him and couldn't help but rejoice in his misfortune. Big ice cube, big ice cube. Who told you to stand by with folded arms? Now you're a fish in the moat who gets caught in the crossfire. The lifeblood pill isn't so easy to buy. If you can't buy it back, then the blame will be on your shoulders. Your Majesty, the Imperial Physician Courtyard has all the other ingredients listed in this prescription. Yunxi and Imperial Physician Jiyu will prepare them as soon as possible. Once the lifeblood pill arrives, we can begin treatment immediately, Han Yunxi said seriously. Emperor Tianhui nodded. Then we'll wait for the Duke of Qin's good news. Everyone dispersed. Han Yunxi used the excuse of going to prepare medicine with Jiyu Beiyu and didn't return with Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi didn't pay her any more attention either. The Empress accompanied the Empress Dowager the entire way out, deeply worried. Mu Fei, Chunxie's heart is in a mess. Can Han Yunxi be trusted or not? The Empress Dowager's heart was also uncertain. After hesitating for a moment, she let out a long sigh. If this girl can cure Tianmo this time, then Ijia will definitely put her in an important position. Back then, Lady Tianxin saved the Empress Dowager's life. The Empress Dowager betrothed Han Yunxi to the Duke of Qin as a chess piece. She wanted to have Han Yunxi spy by the Duke of Qin's side. But who knew that Han Yunxi would grow up to be a good-for-nothing ugly girl, and Han Kongan was unable to cure the crown prince. The Empress nodded and said nothing more. Han Yunxi didn't return to the Duke of Qin's estate until late at night with an empty stomach. As soon as she entered the gates, Grand Concubine Yi summoned her. Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru had been restless all day, waiting for news. What did Han Yunxi's safe return mean? How is the crown prince? Can it be treated? Grand Concubine Yi got straight to the point. Han Yunxi was puzzled. Didn't Long Fei Yi leave first? Could it be that he hadn't come back yet? She didn't care so much. When she saw Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru's expectant looks, her eyes flashed with contempt. She pretended to sigh, but stopped herself. Sister-in-law, just how is it? Mu Fei and I've been worried all day, Murong Wanru asked anxiously. Nothing much, just like that, Han Yunxi said mildly. Like that? Grand Concubine Yi couldn't help asking. It's not a big problem. I have ways to treat it. Han Yunxi finally exposed the truth. She didn't miss the astonishment in Grand Concubine Yi's eyes, nor did she miss Murong Wanru's jealous look. Those who wanted to see her make a fool of herself would only be laughed at back. In other words, you've cured the crown prince? Murong Wanru asked impatiently. He's missing one more ingredient, but that ingredient is very hard to find. We'll have to go to Medicine Ghost Valley to buy it, Han Yunxi replied honestly. Grand Concubine Yi exhaled at these words, while Murong Wanru's lips curved into a mocking smile. I've heard of Medicine Ghost Valley before. Its owner is called His Excellency Pill Fiend, and is a very difficult eccentric who never gives face to anyone. 8 or 9 out of 10 people who go to buy the medicine come back empty-handed. Some even risk their lives to buy it. The nervous Grand Concubine Yi grew calm and composed. So it's like that. Then it'll be very troublesome to cure the crown prince. Han Yunxi agreed wholeheartedly as she nodded her head. Exactly. It'll be very troublesome. But very quickly, she changed the topic. But the Emperor sent His Highness Duke of Qin to ask for the medicine. As I see it, this shouldn't be too difficult, right? Both Grand Concubine Yi and Murong Wanru gave a start at these words. Immediately, Grand Concubine Yi slapped the table in anger. What? His sending the Duke of Qin to Medicine Ghost Valley? Han Yunxi's expression was both naive and earnest as she nodded her head. If the Duke of Qin goes, he'll definitely get the medicine. The Emperor's decision won't be wrong. Grand Concubine Yi's heart felt stifled as she clenched her fists, narrowly avoiding a slap. But Han Yunxi's last words of the Emperor's decision forced her to swallow her anger. On one side, Murong Wanru was completely stupefied. Everyone knew that Medicine Ghost Valley wasn't a good place, much less a place to buy medicine. What if something happened to the Duke of Qin? What if he didn't come back with the medicine? Then wouldn't the Duke of Qin have to shoulder all the blame? Why did Han Yunxi's troubles end up in the Duke of Qin's lap instead? If she knew things would turn out like this, she wouldn't have spread rumors to kill Han Yunxi. Murong Wanru's face turned green with regret as well as her intestines. After a tiring day, Han Yunxi came back to see mother and daughter suffer in silence. Her spirits were refreshed and she forgot all about her exhaustion. Mu Fei, the Emperor ordered Chunxie to rest well for the next few days and make the best preparations to treat the crown prince. It's getting late, Chunxie will withdraw first. As she spoke, she bowed respectfully and casually turned around to leave. Grand Concubine Yi was so angry that she could explode at any moment. Blue veins popped out on the back of her hands as she clenched them into fists, but there was nothing she could do to Han Yunshi. The emperor wasn't someone Grand Concubine Yi dared to provoke lightly. Just who spread those rumors? They deserved to die. Grand Concubine Yi raged. Murong Wanru's heart pounded, but she didn't dare to make a sound. Han Yunshi's footsteps were light and quick. This was the first time she discovered the benefits of imperial power in this world. When she returned to the hibiscus courtyard, Han Yunshi couldn't help but stop when she saw the darkness of Long Fei Yi's quarters. That guy hadn't come back, so where did he go? Did he head straight for the Medicine Ghost Valley? That's too fast, isn't it? She bit her lip and thought, that guy's martial arts are so good. He shouldn't have run into any danger in the Medicine Ghost Valley, right? Moreover, he's so famous that maybe pill fiend Jiu Qi Shuo will give him face. Thinking up to here, Han Yunshi felt even more at ease and gracefully turned to head for her Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. Leisurely Cloud Pavilion was brightly lit. Han Yunshi thought that little Chen Xiong must have been worried about her and lit the lanterns to wait for her to come back. Although little Chen Xiong was a servant girl, having someone at home waiting for her was still a warm feeling. Little Chen Xiong, Han Yunshi shouted before she even entered. She was starving and needed Chen Xiong to find her something to eat. Little Chen Xiong, unexpectedly, just as she reached the loft's entrance, she saw little Chen Xiong standing timidly by the door with her head lowered. Inside the room, a certain guy was brewing tea. From Han Yunshi's angle, the steam from the tea rose in spirals, and the man was as beautiful as a painting. Honestly, it didn't feel real at all. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunshi couldn't help but mutter. The person inside the room was none other than the Duke of Qin, Long Fei Yi. From the looks of it, he seemed to be waiting for her. Mistress. His Highness has been waiting for you for a long time. Chen Xiong reminded her in a low voice, and Han Yunshi finally came back to her senses. Waited for a long time? Could it be that he came to her after leaving the palace? Han Yunshi hurriedly walked in. This concubine greets His Highness. Long Fei Yi poured tea and didn't even raise his eyes as he said indifferently, "You finished preparing the medicine?" Han Yunshi responded, her heart beating like a drum. She couldn't figure out why this guy had come. She knew that this guy was smarter than the emperor, but even so, he shouldn't be able to see through the crown prince's illness. What did he come here for? Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi stood up and said indifferently, "Then pack up and follow this prince to the Medicine Ghost Valley." What? Han Yunshi exclaimed. Long Fei Yi raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Is there a problem? Yes. There was a big problem. It wasn't a good place, so why did he want her to go? Han Yunshi had already answered in her heart, but her face revealed an awkward expression as she helplessly said, "Your Highness, this concubine doesn't know that medicine ghost and can't help. I'm afraid that I'll be a burden to your Highness." "This prince isn't afraid of you being a burden," Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunshi sighed softly and said, "But, this concubine still has some details to discuss with Imperial Physician Ji Yu. I'm afraid, the Crown Prince's been ill for 7 years. A few more days won't make a difference. It won't be too late to come back for a visit," Long Fei Yi continued. "Your Highness, if something unexpected happens to this concubine on the way, it'll be hard to explain to His Majesty," Han Yunshi threatened boldly. Unfortunately, she could only threaten Grand Concubine Yi, but not Long Fei Yi. He was very domineering. There won't be any unexpected mishaps. Han Yunshi felt gloomy, but couldn't think of a reason to refuse him no matter how hard she racked her brains. Thus, she changed the subject. "Your Highness, why do you suddenly want this concubine to go with you? It was fine to ask the reason, right?" But Long Fei Yi didn't answer, his tone cold and unyielding. "I'll give you the time it takes to brew a cup of tea to prepare. Your lordship will wait for you at the back door." So speaking, he turned and left, leaving Han Yunshi standing there in a daze with a crumbling face. "Long Fei Yi, you win." How could the time it took to brew a cup of tea be enough for Han Yunshi to pack up? But little Chen Xiong had already prepared her luggage, as well as some snacks to allay her hunger. Without a doubt, this was what Long Fei Yi had told Chen Xiong to prepare. He'd steeled his heart to take her along. Han Yunshi wanted to cry, but had no tears. Chen Xiong, on the other hand, was very happy. Mistress, I heard them say that His Highness never takes a woman out. Moreover, he never uses a female servant. You're the first. Han Yunshi's mouth twitched. She was probably the only woman in the world who knew that nothing good would come of going out with His Highness Duke of Qin. Mistress, what kind of place is that Medicine Ghost Valley? What are they going to do there? How long will they be gone for? Chen Xiong asked curiously as she sent Han Yunshi out. Han Yunshi rolled her eyes. You're so excited. Do you want to come along? Chen Xiong was so scared that she immediately retreated back into the room. She shook her head vigorously and smiled ambiguously. Her face was red from smiling. With this servant here, it'll be inconvenient for you. Han Yunshi looked at the sky, speechless. This little Chen Xiong was so young, yet so mischievous. Did she think they were going on a honeymoon? She helplessly shook her head, too lazy to explain. She waved at Chen Xiong and left. When she reached the back door, Han Yunshi saw the carriage. Yi, this guy wasn't taking her flying this time. She seemed to like the feeling of flying. What was she thinking? Han Yunshi shook her head and got into the carriage. She saw Long Fei Yi leaning lazily with one hand supporting his head. She found a place to the side and also leaned lazily. She thought, let's go. Who's afraid of who? No matter what, you have to be responsible for bringing this Wang Fei back safe and sound. Who knew that Long Fei Yi would raise his eyes to look at her and then order coldly, take a shortcut to Snake Valley first. Snake Valley? Han Yunshi had a very bad premonition in her heart. Chapter 57. The stable carriage sped along without any bumps. If it wasn't for the sound of the wind, Han Yunshi wouldn't have known the carriage was moving so fast. Only she and Long Fei Yi were inside the carriage. Long Fei Yi had only spared her a glance since she got on, before closing his eyes again without a word. Han Yunshi was naturally bold. Even in front of the emperor, she dared to argue. But for some reason, she always felt timid before this man's iciness. She wanted to ask him about Snake Gorge, but seeing him close his eyes, she didn't. Unconsciously, she began to size him up timidly. His features looked like they'd been carved by the heavens themselves. Narrow eyes, a high nose, and thin lips, they were all perfect and flawless. Han Yunshi never thought that such a cold man existed in this world. Even when he was quiet, his entire body emanated a coldness that kept people at arm's length, forcing them to stay at a respectful distance. Was he like this since he was young? He was so cold to Grand Concubine Yi, but what about the late emperor? In this world, was there anyone who had ever seen his warm side, who had ever seen him smile from the bottom of his heart? Thinking up to here, she couldn't help but wonder if a woman would appear to receive his lifetime's promise and love. But soon enough, Han Yunshi smiled. She really was overthinking things. Would such a cold and emotionless man have feelings? Dismissing these distracting thoughts, Han Yunshi averted her gaze and leaned lazily to one side. She'd better figure out what kind of place Snake Gorge was. Why did she feel like this guy had brought her out with the scent of a conspiracy? At this moment, Long Fei Yi slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Han Yunshi. It was only a faint glance before he closed them again. The carriage traveled through the night until the next morning. As soon as Han Yunshi opened her eyes, she met Long Fei Yi's icy gaze. Ah! She jumped in fright and quickly sat up. You're awake? Long Fei Yi asked. What are you doing? Han Yunshi was so fierce. Why was this guy so close? Long Fei Yi pushed her away, a look of disdain flashing in his eyes. I wanted to wake you up. All right. Han Yunshi calmed down. Have we arrived? What kind of place was Snake Valley? Were there a lot of poisonous snakes? Is that why you brought me along? Han Yunshi thought about it over and over again last night. Other than this reason, this guy had no reason to bring her out. There's only one venomous snake, and its snake core is what Jiyu Qisha wants the most. If we exchange the snake core for a lifeblood pill, he'll definitely give it to us, Long Fei Yi explained. So it turned out. Alright, this guy was indeed omnipotent. He could even find out about this. With this information, it would not be difficult to obtain the lifeblood pill. Of course, the crux of this matter was her. Han Yunxi's self-confidence grew a bit. She wasn't afraid of venomous snakes and whatnot. Let's go. Take me to see what kind of poisonous snake it is. Han Yunxi was brimming with confidence as she jumped off the carriage. Just as she was about to walk forward, Long Fei Yi's words caused her to stop abruptly. It's a poisonous python. What? Han Yunxi abruptly turned her head, her brows furrowed. It's a poisonous python. Long Fei Yi patiently repeated. If it was an ordinary poisonous snake, he would not have brought her along. Bringing a woman along on a journey would cause all kinds of trouble. Poisonous python, Han Yunxi muttered to herself. This time, she was completely shocked. One had to know that pythons were not poisonous. Poisonous snakes had front and back teeth that could secrete nerve venom. They could inject the venom into their prey's body, causing their prey to die before swallowing it. However, pythons did not have the ability to attack with venom. Their attack was to use force to bind their prey and strangle it to death before swallowing it. But the pythons here were actually poisonous, and they were even giant pythons. Han Yunxi was at a loss. She searched through the detoxification system, but there were no relevant records at all. Without a doubt, this poisonous python was a completely new species to her. Seeing her pale face, Long Fei Yi asked, "Is there a problem? How big is this snake?" Han Yunxi asked. "It's about 3 zhong long. Moreover, it's agile and can spit out poisonous gas." Long Fei Yi answered truthfully. According to his understanding, there were many people who had designs on this poisonous python, but until now, no one had been able to capture it. The number of people who died in the Snake Valley was not small. 3 zhong, that was 10 meters. It was also agile and could spit out poisonous gas. Wasn't it a demon? Hearing this, Han Yunxi's face became even more unsightly. She made a prompt decision. I can't handle this. I can't cure the poison of the poisonous python. You have to think of other ways. She was unarmed. If she could not cure the poison, once she got close to the poisonous python, she would either be poisoned to death or strangled to death. Why? Long Fei Yi did not understand. There are thousands of kinds of poisons in the world, and I'm not omnipotent. Han Yunxi generously admitted. Long Fei Yi had not personally come here. He originally thought that bringing Han Yunxi, this poisonous woman, would make things easier. Now, he hesitated. Who knew that at this time, the horse beside him suddenly raised its front hooves and neighed in fright. Not good. Long Fei Yi coldly said. Before his voice fell, he saw a huge snake head suddenly fly out from the forest on the right side, spitting out poisonous gas. In the blink of an eye, Long Fei Yi grabbed Han Yunxi and retreated in the direction of the valley. But very soon, a giant snake's tail lashed out at them like a whip. Long Fei Yi had no choice but to retreat into the valley. Very quickly, the giant python's entire body was exposed. It was like a huge sword, chasing after them at high speed. Long Fei Yi was vigilant of the surrounding movements as he sped forward to escape. Han Yunxi was held tightly in his arms as she gaped at the sight. When Long Fei Yi told her about it, she didn't have such a direct impression, but now that she saw it for herself, she was given a fright. This snake was so terrifying. There were several times when the poisonous gas almost hit her body, but her detoxification system did not prompt her. Once again, this proved that this poison was unfamiliar. If Han Yunxi had enough time to collect samples, she could still research the antidote. Unfortunately, her life was at stake now. The deeper they went into the valley, the denser the trees became. As a result, their risk factor was even higher. Long Fei Yi kept moving forward at a terrifying speed. Han Yunxi thought that since he entered the valley, this guy should be trying to escape from the other exit as soon as possible. But, suddenly, Long Fei Yi changed direction. Carrying Han Yunxi, he fled into the dense forest on the right. You don't plan on leaving the valley? Han Yunxi was shocked. This prince is here for the snake pill, Long Fei Yi said. Compared to this poisonous giant python, Medicine Ghost Valley's Jiu Qishaw was more difficult to deal with. He did not have the leisure to ask for medicine. Since he had entered Snake Valley, He definitely would not return empty-handed. The poisonous giant python seemed to be surprised by Long Fei Yi's actions. It stopped for a moment, but then disappeared into the dense forest. Seeing this, Han Yunqi did not have time to persuade Long Fei Yi. She shouted, "That thing disappeared." Long Fei Yi made a prompt decision to fly upwards. At the same time, the poison python pounced on empty air. What a close shave. This was a competition of speed. Soon, the poisonous giant python disappeared again. Long Fei Yi landed on the tallest tree. With one hand around Han Yunqi's waist and the other on the tree trunk, he looked down at the entire valley. Although Han Yunqi was afraid, this was the first time she was looking down at the world from such a high place. She felt a surge of emotions and was extremely excited. Although nothing good came out of going out with this guy, it was always exciting. She knew that it was impossible for him to escape. If he wanted to escape, he would have done so long ago. Since they were already here, they might as well throw caution to the wind and fight with the poisonous giant python. Who knows, they might really be able to get the snake pill. Look, over there. Han Yunqi's eyes were sharp. She quickly saw the movement in the forest. Because of the poisonous giant python's existence, the animals in Snake Valley had either died or escaped. Such a large movement could only be caused by the poisonous giant python. Long Fei Yi looked over and brought Han Yunqi to the bottom right branch of a tree. "Stand properly," he said coldly. Han Yunqi immediately hugged the tree trunk tightly. She had to admit that once he let go, her sense of security disappeared. Long Fei Yi did not hold onto the tree trunk. He stood firmly in the middle of the tree branch. His body was tall and straight like a pine tree. He held the crossbow with both hands and aimed his cold gaze at the constantly moving undulations. Han Yunqi looked at him from the side. She only felt that this man was extremely cool. No matter how she looked at him, he looked like a top-notch dark assassin. Suddenly, the movement in the thicket came to an abrupt stop. The poisonous python stopped. Long Fei Yi slowly narrowed his eyes. The constantly moving crossbow also stopped in one direction. The arrow was narked on the string and could be released at any time. Han Yunqi nervously held her breath. But who knew that just when she thought that Long Fei Yi would release the arrow, he suddenly turned around and aimed at a direction behind him. He quickly released the arrow. Shoo! What a sharp sound. She only saw that the arrow was like a bolt of lightning. Its momentum was powerful and its speed was astonishing. Even though the arrow had already flown out, Han Yunqi could still feel the powerful force on the arrow. She did not expect that this guy would actually pour his internal energy into the arrow. But, why did he change direction? While Han Yunqi was still trying to figure it out, Long Fei Yi had already shot out countless arrows, each of them as swift as a meteor shower. Like a bolt of lightning, they contained boundless power. When the huge snake tail swung out from the thicket, Han Yunqi finally understood. Long Fei Yi had just given up on the snake tail and shot the snake head. If she guessed correctly, the poisonous giant python's head was already seriously injured, which restricted its movements. With a head injury, it would be difficult for it to escape with its huge body and snake tail. This shooting might seem simple, but if it was someone else, they might not be able to escape from the poisonous giant python's pursuit. Secondly, even if they were able to stand high up and shoot arrows, they might not be able to hit every single one of them and seriously injure the poisonous giant python. Han Yunqi knew that every arrow that Long Fei Yi shot contained a huge amount of power. Otherwise, a small crossbow arrow compared to the giant python's body was like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. Long Fei Yi had already stopped, but the veins on the back of his hands had not disappeared. The huge snake tail swung crazily in the air and very quickly, the surrounding trees were all razed to the ground. Han Yunqi estimated that the snake tail would not affect the tree they were on. She was relieved and looked towards the snake head with Long Fei Yi. As long as the snake head was dead, no matter how big the movement of the snake tail was, it would just be struggling at death's door. They waited. Long Fei Yi took out his crossbow again. However, at this moment, there was a huge movement in the direction of the snake head. It seemed that the snake head was making its final struggle. But not long later, the movement gradually disappeared. He's finally dead. Han Yunxi asked timidly. Long Fei Yi did not reply. His eyes were filled with caution as he continued to wait. Who knew that at this moment, a white figure suddenly leapt down from the tree not too far away and charged towards the poisonous giant python's head. Han Yunxi saw it clearly. It was a white-robed lady. What guts, to actually dare to reap the benefits in front of Long Fei Yi. Chapter 58. To dare to snatch something from Long Fei Yi, this white-robed lady must be tired of living. Han Yunxi was just thinking about this when she saw a white poisonous fog suddenly sprayed out from the forest and almost headed straight for that lady. Be careful, it's poisonous. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi cried out in alarm, and in an instant, his figure flashed as he dashed downward. Was he going to stop her or to save her? Based on his character, shouldn't he snort coldly, "Serves you right," or seeking death? Han Yunxi was stunned as she looked on in disbelief. Very quickly, she confirmed that she hadn't seen wrongly, and that cry of alarm earlier, she didn't seem to have heard wrongly. She had never thought that Long Fei Yi would also have times when he was anxious. Who was that white-robed lady? Long Fei Yi's speed was so fast that one couldn't see him clearly with their eyes. All they could see was a black shadow flashing past, and when they saw him again, he had already hugged the white-robed lady and flew towards the opposite tree. Han Yunxi's heart gave a start at the sight of the two figures leaning against each other, but she quickly dismissed the thought. The white poisonous fog dissipated and the forest regained its tranquility. No one knew if that snake's head was dead or not. Han Yunxi looked from afar and saw that Long Fei Yi and that lady seemed to be talking about something. Unfortunately, the distance was too far and she wasn't able to see that lady's appearance clearly. Secondly, she wasn't able to hear their voices. Who was that lady and what was her relationship with Long Fei Yi? Just as Han Yunxi was puzzling over this, the ground suddenly shook and she saw that the poisonous huge python in the forest was actually flipping its body. As its body flipped, that huge snake tail swung towards the tree that Han Yunxi was in. Seeing the huge snake tail approaching, Han Yunxi didn't know what to do and instinctively looked towards Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi was just about to come over when who knew that white-robed lady suddenly flew downwards towards the huge python's head. "Come back!" Long Fei Yi shouted. However, the woman in white turned around and glanced at her with a hint of provocation in her eyes. Instead, she sped up and flew down. At this moment, the snake's tail slammed heavily on the trunk of the big tree that Han Yunxi was standing on. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Ah! Han Yunxi was terrified. It was more than 10 meters high. She would die if she didn't jump. Instinctively, she hugged the trunk of the tree, hoping that the tree would fall slowly. Unexpectedly, the poisonous python's huge tail actually swung over again. Bang! Although Han Yunxi hugged the tree trunk tightly, the impact was so strong that she couldn't even hold on to it. She subconsciously let go of her grip and fell straight down. Long Fei Yi was watching all of this. A complicated look flitted past his eyes before he turned to chase after the white-robed lady. Han Yunxi fell in a straight line on all fours. She didn't see Long Fei Yi turn his head, but she was very clear in her heart that with his speed, he would have saved her long ago if he wanted to. But he didn't come. He never came. She didn't know when she'd hit the ground, or if it would hurt when she did. Han Yunxi closed her eyes, her voice choked with sobs. "Long Fei Yi, you bastard. I'll hate you even if I die." As Han Yunxi fell, Long Fei Yi had already caught up to the white-robed lady and kicked her away from the python. "Duanmu Yarrow, have some sense of propriety," he said coldly. "I thought Big Brother Fei Ye wouldn't care about Yarrow's life or death after getting married." Duanmu Yarrow's white robes made her look like a celestial maiden from the 9 heavens. When she smiled, her dimples flickered in and out, adding to her cuteness. She was the princess of Western Ju, an ally of Tianing country and Long Fei Yi's junior sister. "Your lordship will say it one last time. Scram immediately, or else I won't be polite," Long Fei Yi said coldly. He glanced to the right and saw Han Yunxi about to hit the ground. Duanmu Yarrow arched a brow. "Big Brother Fei Ye, do you think my life or your Wang Fei's is more important?" As she spoke, she actually wanted to fly towards the poisonous python's head. She was clearly threatening Long Fei Yi with her life. Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with rage. If you want to die, then your lordship can send you on your way when you're 18 years old. So speaking, he kicked viciously at Duanmu Yao. On one hand, he sent her flying far away into the distant thickets, while on the other, he used her body as leverage to speed himself towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi was in despair. Although her eyes were closed and her back was to the ground, she could clearly feel that she was about to hit the ground. Was this what it felt like to jump off a building? Soon enough, the back of her head would hit the ground hard, causing brain matter to splatter everywhere. Would all her limbs be smashed to pieces? Who said there was no need to be afraid with him around? Who said there wouldn't be any unexpected mishaps? A single tear silently slid from the corner of her eye. She gritted her teeth and opened her eyes. Even if she was going to die, she'd take one last look at this world. But who knew that the moment she opened her eyes, she would see a handsome face that angered both men and gods. It was as cold as ice, like a carved sculpture. His eyes were as deep as a cold lake, and his lips were as thin as a cicada's wings. So familiar, yet so unfamiliar. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi couldn't help but smile. Was this a hallucination right before her death? She didn't expect that she was still hoping that he would come and save her. Long Fei Yi leaned down and grabbed Han Yunxi's waist, slowly spinning her down. Han Yunxi only felt that this hallucination was very real, yet so beautiful that it felt like a beautiful dream. Everything between heaven and earth seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them. She forgot her fear, forgot her hatred, and indulged herself in his eyes that were as deep as the sea. Unconsciously, she reached out and gently caressed his cheek. Who knew that at this moment, Long Fei Yi's handsome brows suddenly furrowed, and his cold eyes became even colder. At this moment, Han Yunxi woke up with a start. This guy could furrow his brows. This guy was real. She was so shocked that she was dumbstruck. Her hand froze on his face, and the moment he landed with her, he let go of her hand and slapped away her hand on his cheek in disgust. Han Yunxi didn't even have time to react before her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. Finally, the fall woke her up. Thinking about how she had lost her composure just now, Han Yunxi instantly blushed. She was so embarrassed that she forgot to get up. Long Fei Yi's face was gloomy as he looked down disdainfully, but he still reached out to pull her up. Han Yunxi's face was completely red. Looking at his large hand, a trace of warmth flowed through her heart. Just as she was about to reach out, who knew that Long Fei Yi would say cold, troublesome. The moment he said this, Han Yunxi's hand froze, and she quickly retracted it. A trace of disappointment flashed across her eyes, and then she became angry. She didn't say she wanted to come along. He was the one who'd forced her here to treat the snake's poison. She'd suffered such a fright, but she hadn't even reprimanded him. Instead, he was disdaining her first. She'd even felt warmth in her heart, but now it looked like it was all one-sided wishful thinking. Just then, he'd chosen someone else in the face of life and death. Now he'd come to save her because he was afraid he'd have a hard time explaining things to Emperor Tianhui. Han Yunxi pushed her hands against the ground to push herself up. She glared at Long Fei Yi and said, "My life is cheap. I'm trouble. You brought this trouble on yourself. Bring this Wang Fei back the same way you brought me out. If I lose a single hair, this Wang Fei won't be able to treat the crown prince." Long Fei Yi's disgusted expression stiffened before he said coldly, "Don't be such a coward. You still have your life." So speaking, he avoided Han Yunxi's glare and turned to look at the struggling poison python. It was still spitting out white poison mist, but there wasn't as much of it as before. It was obvious that it was struggling at death's door. Han Yunxi was at a loss for words. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. She decided not to say anything. She was puzzled. Where'd that white-robed woman go? Did she leave? That woman was focused on the snake's head. If she wasn't here to steal the snake core, then what was she here for? She and Long Fei Yi knew each other, right? Just then, Long Fei Yi was clearly afraid she'd be poisoned and wanted to save her. Han Yunxi was curious, but more than that, she was angry. Did Long Fei Yi know that she'd die as soon as he arrived? For better or for worse, he was the one who'd brought her out. Did he treat her life like dirt? Long Fei Yi waited for the poison python to die. Han Yunxi simply sat cross-legged at the side without saying a word. If it wasn't for the fear of the poison python's poison, with Long Fei Yi's ability, he'd probably have gotten the snake core long ago. Now they could only wait for the poison python to exhaust its energy. However, not long after, Long Fei Yi became impatient. He leapt onto a small tree and took out his crossbow. He aimed at the position where the white poison mist was coming out and launched another attack. Swish, swish, swish. Arrows flew down one after another. Not only did the power not weaken, it was even stronger than before. Blood splattered everywhere. Han Yunxi was frightened by this, and only then did she realize this fellow's anger. He was very unhappy and was clearly venting his anger. If she didn't have a bargaining chip in her hand, would she become the target of his anger? Thinking of this, Han Yunxi's hair stood on end. She thought that her previous rebuttal shouldn't have made this fellow so angry. She was always insignificant in his eyes. It should be that white-clothed girl who provoked him. Han Yunxi obviously didn't want to be so curious, but she didn't know why she became curious again. Although she knew that he wouldn't tell her, she still wanted to ask. Han Yunxi was conflicted. All right, she was still angry and had a cold war with him. Don't ask. Even if Long Fei Yi's attack was so fierce, this poison python was after all a huge python that had lived for many years. It wouldn't die so easily. The huge snake tail was still swaying crazily. That bloody snake head even jumped up a few times and sprayed a circle of white poison mist around it. Seeing this, Long Fei Yi became more and more impatient. He jumped down from the short tree and walked forward to find a better position to attack. Han Yunxi looked at his back view. Her face was gloomy and she didn't say a word. She thought to herself, surnamed Long, just leave. Go far away. If he left her here alone and something happened later, he would be responsible for it. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi had only taken a few steps when he turned back. He looked down at Han Yunxi and ordered, "Get up." "What?" Han Yunxi asked curiously. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi didn't answer her. Instead, he suddenly pulled her up and hugged her tightly. He flew into the sky and flew to a tree about 7 to 8 meters tall. "Ah!" Han Yunxi screamed all the way to the top of the tree. She had almost died from the fall just now. She probably wouldn't dare to climb a tree for a year. Long Fei Yi impatiently said sternly, "What are you screaming for?" Han Yunxi turned around and buried her head in his arms. Her arms wrapped around him tightly. She was scared and angry. "Long Fei Yi, I'm warning you. If you leave me alone on a tree again, I'll definitely. Long Fei Yi waited. However, Han Yunxi's brain short-circuited. After saying definitely for a while, she said, "I'll definitely not let you off." Long Fei Yi was stunned. He lowered his head and saw that the person in his arms was actually trembling. Unexpectedly, his lips curled up slightly and a faint smile appeared on his face. No one must have told him that when he smiled, the whole world would be overshadowed in an instant. That was because no one had ever seen such a pure smile on his face. Allowing Han Yunxi to hug him tightly, Long Fei Yi held the crossbow with both hands and aimed at the snake's wide-open mouth. Swoosh! The arrow pierced through the mouth. Chapter 59. An arrow pierced through the python's mouth, completely taking care of it. Long Fei Yi watched as the python rolled over and stopped moving, no longer spitting out white poison mist. Only then did he put away his crossbow in satisfaction. At this time, a certain timid woman was still hanging in his arms, completely unaware of everything that had happened. His lips curved in a shallow arc. With his hands behind his back, he gently flew down and landed beside the python. "You can let go now." When the ice-cold voice sounded from the sky, Han Yunxi finally recovered from her fright. She discovered that her feet had already touched the ground. She subconsciously raised her head and met a certain person's heartless gaze. She immediately let go as if she had been electrocuted. Long Fei Yi ignored her and pulled out his dagger to retrieve the snake core. Han Yunxi lightly coughed a few times and acted as if nothing had happened as she watched from the side. She only saw him move quickly and nimbly, taking out a pellet-sized snake core in no time. With this snake core, It was equivalent to having the lifeblood pill. They had more than half succeeded. Han Yunxi composed herself and took out her golden needle to collect the python's blood. This kind of rare poison, of course she had to bring it back to properly study it. "What are you doing?" Long Feiyi asked. "Nothing." Han Yunxi's face was taut and her tone was even colder. She didn't want to talk to him anymore for the time being. "Coward." Long Feiyi spat. Han Yunxi angrily clenched her fists, but she only pretended not to hear it. After collecting the blood, she said, "Now that you've obtained the snake core, I'm no longer of any use to you. I want to go back." Long Feiyi was slightly stunned, but he didn't urge her to stay. He coldly said, "Let's go. This prince will bring you out of the valley." Thus, the two of them silently walked back the way they came. Helplessly, when they reached the valley, they discovered that the carriage and coachman had been poisoned to death. No one could protect her back. Han Yunxi secretly rejoiced in her heart, thinking, "Let's see what you plan to do with this trouble of mine now. Who told you to look for trouble again?" Unexpectedly, Long Feiyi gave her two choices. "Either you walk back by yourself, or you come with me." After he finished speaking, he didn't give Han Yunxi any time to think. He turned around and went back into the valley. Han Yunxi cherished her life very much. There were a lot of robbers along the way, and it was very dangerous. She didn't dare to go back alone. Most importantly, she didn't know the way. While she was still hesitating, that guy's back view was already very far away. "Are you serious?" Han Yunxi panicked and quickly chased after him while shouting, "Hey! Long Feiyi, you're too much. Stop right there, Long Feiyi. If you don't stop, I'll leave immediately." Long Feiyi didn't stop when he heard her shouting. Instead, he walked faster and faster. The smile on his face grew wider and wider. Han Yunxi had no choice but to run. Thus, the two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly passed through the valley. Duanmu Yarrow lay weakly on a tall tree in the valley, blood still dripping from her lips. Long Feiyi had used just the right amount of strength to heavily injure her so that she couldn't move, but it didn't take her life. She was clearly as beautiful as a celestial fairy, but her phoenix eyes were as malicious as a witch's. Coldly, she watched the two figures disappear into the distance. "Han Yunxi, you're really shameless. You actually dared to hug my senior brother." Duanmu Yarrow's maidservants were also in disbelief. The Duke of Qin, who was obsessed with cleanliness, actually allowed a woman to get close to him, and even hug him so tightly. Could it be that they were mistaken? "Slut, I'll definitely kill you." The more Duanmu Yarrow thought about it, the angrier she became. After all, she'd left the palace this time precisely because of Han Yunxi. She advised in a low voice, "Princess, recuperating is more important." "I won't. Let's see what he'll do if I die. How will he explain this to Master?" Duanmu Yarrow raged. Her anger aggravated her internal injuries, causing her to spit up a mouthful of blood. "Princess, you know as well that the Duke of Qin hates being threatened. Why must you?" Before the maidservant could finish, Duanmu Yarrow cut her off harshly. "Do I count as someone else in his eyes? He'd rather hurt me than save that woman's life. Since when has Han Yunxi been more important than this princess in his heart?" "Princess, Han Yunxi is still Qin Wangfei appointed by the Empress Dowager." The Duke of Qin probably had no choice, the maidservant coaxed again. Duanmu Yarrow laughed coldly. As long as he's unwilling, there's nothing in this world that can't be forced. Han Yunxi had married into the Duke of Qin's estate on the Emperor's orders. But why did he leave that woman there? She'd been waiting in silence for him to get rid of Han Yunxi since the wedding, but he didn't make a move. Instead, he kept her by his side. They'd been martial brothers and junior sister for so many years, but when had he ever taken her out on a business trip? Just what part of that useless, cowardly woman caught his eye? The more she thought, the angrier she grew. Let's go to Tianning's capital city. I want to stay at the Duke of Qin's estate, to recuperate. Princess, His Highness Crown Prince is still in Medicine Ghost Valley asking for medicine for esteemed Empress. You should at least make a trip there, the maidservant reminded her urgently. Duanmu Yarrow finally remembered and could only nod her head. It won't be too late to go to the capital after asking for the medicine, she mused. By now, Han Yunxi was in Long Fei Yi's arms again as they flew through the air, weaving through the trees. Although she'd given Long Fei Yi a cold look, she was once again curious about the white-robed woman. Still, she couldn't guess her intentions. As expected, curiosity killed the cat. After a long struggle, Han Yunxi couldn't help but ask, "Hey, who was that white-robed woman just then?" Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi pretended not to hear her question. He stared straight ahead with an expressionless face. Han Yunxi rolled her eyes as she lost all interest in the matter. After a day's rush, they arrived at Medicine Ghost Valley early the next morning. As soon as they entered the valley, Han Yunxi caught a whiff of the various fragrances of medicinal plants. Heaven knows how many medicinal ingredients were planted here, but it was truly a miraculous place. Soon, they arrived at the real entrance. They saw a gate made of vines and 2 medicine boys guarding it. There were 2 groups of people in front of the gate. One group was lining up, and the other group was all kneeling. It looked like the people in line were here to buy medicine, while the kneeling ones were here to beg for it. Han Yunxi and the others watched for a while, only to see the people in line chatting with an old steward for a while. They were all dejected and joined the kneeling line. It looked like they couldn't buy any medicinal ingredients. Suddenly, the kneeling person rushed over and shouted, "Master Pill Fiend, I'm willing to pay 10 million taels of gold for a stalk of dragon beard grass. Please do me a favor, I'm waiting for the medicine to save my life." The old steward immediately walked over and angrily rebuked, "What are you shouting for? Is this a place where you can show off your wealth? Come, kick him out." Steward Ming, how could this lowly one dare to show off his wealth? This lowly one has exhausted all of his family's property to beg for the medicine. Steward Ming, please do me a favor and inform your master. That person hurriedly begged on his knees. However, Steward Ming was unreasonable and waved his hand, ordering people to kick him out. Han Yunxi frowned as she watched. She knew how precious the dragon beard grass was, but it wasn't worth 10 million taels of gold. Moreover, he had already lost his family's fortune. Seeing that person in tears and despair, Han Yunxi felt very uncomfortable. She really wanted to give him a stalk of dragon beard grass. She just happened to have a few stalks in her detoxification system. Unfortunately, looking at the hundreds of people in front of her, she gave up. She could help one person, but not all of them. If she only helped one person in front of all the people in need, she wouldn't be seen as a good person. She would only be seen as a heartless villain like the Medicine Ghost Valley. Moreover, they were here to ask for medicine, not to cause trouble. At this time, Steward Ming saw them and came over, gesturing. Hey, you two. I'm talking about you two. What are you standing there for? Don't you know the rules? Why aren't you lining up?" Long Fei Yi looked over and ordered coldly, "You, come here." Steward Ming was stunned, then his face was filled with disbelief. "What did you say? I told you to come here. Don't you understand human language?" Long Fei Yi retorted. Steward Ming was immediately enraged and rushed over. He could tell at a glance that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had extraordinary auras. They were either rich or respectable. However, there were many influential people who came to the Medicine Ghost Valley to ask for medicine. He had seen even more respectable people, but he had never seen anyone so arrogant. He looked at Long Fei Yi with disdain. "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like that? You want medicine? Haha, don't even think about it." Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. He said coldly, "Go tell Jiu Qi Shuo that Long Fei Yi has brought a poisonous python pill. Ask him if he wants to trade." Steward Ming was almost choked to death. As soon as he heard the words Long Fei Yi, his eyes widened. When he heard the words poisonous python pill, he nodded furiously. Only then did Long Fei Yi release him. The old steward didn't even report his arrival, but said respectfully, "I didn't know it was Your Highness Duke of Qin. If I've offended you, please forgive me. Your Highness Duke of Qin, please wait a moment. This one will immediately go report." Han Yunxi was startled on the side. Only now did she realize that the words Long Fei Yi were useful not only in Tianning's capital city, but outside as well. There had to be a reason why Tianning's emperor feared Long Fei Yi. Soon enough, the old steward scrambled out of the courtyard like a lackey. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, His Excellency Pill Fiend invites you in. Please follow this one." Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi climbed into the carriage as soon as they passed through the rattan gates. As they sped along, Han Yunxi discovered that all the plants within the gates were actually medicinal ingredients. Moreover, the deeper they went, the more precious the plants became. Good heavens, Jiu Qi Sho might not have any medical ethics, but he's definitely a rare talent. Soon enough, the carriage stopped in front of an elegant courtyard by a stream. Steward Ming didn't follow them inside, but announced, "His Highness Duke of Qin has arrived." Very soon, a strange, slow voice drifted out of the room. It was so strange that it didn't seem to come from a human. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, you've brought a poisonous python pill on your first visit. What should this excellency give you in exchange?" "The lifeblood pill," Long Fei Yi replied. Silence fell upon the room at his words. After a long time, the strange, androgynous voice spoke again. "You too, come in." Han Yunxi felt goosebumps all over her body when she heard the strange voice. She followed Long Fei Yi into the room. When she saw the person inside, Han Yunxi felt another layer of goosebumps all over her body. Sitting in the main seat was a tall man dressed in black. His black robes covered his entire body, and even his head was covered by a large black hood. From afar, he looked like a faceless person. This was the ghost genius, Jiu Qi Sho. Han Yunxi originally thought that he was an old man, but now she couldn't even guess his age. Even his gender was a blur. Han Yunxi was curious, but Long Fei Yi wasn't. He asked Long Fei Yi coldly, "Jiu Qi Sho, do you want to make the exchange?" "Aye." Jiu Qi Sho let out a long sigh. "Unfortunately, someone brought the 7 stars caterpillar grass and also wants to exchange it for the lifeblood pill. These are 2 things that this excellency has been dreaming of for a long time. How do you expect this excellency to choose?" Chapter 60. What? Someone actually brought 7 stars caterpillar grass to trade for the lifeblood pill? And he even came earlier than us. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi looked at each other in surprise. They'd thought that victory was already in their grasp, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? Fortunately, Jiu Qi Sho hadn't given away the lifeblood pill yet. Otherwise, their trip would have been in vain. "What does your excellency Pill Fiend plan to do?" Long Fei Yi asked. "Aya, Duke of Qin, what do you think we should do?" Jiu Qi Sho's sigh was very soft, but it was hair-raising for no reason. It was as if his voice was right next to their ears. "It's very simple. Just trade with this prince," Long Fei Yi said as he immediately flashed the poisonous python pill, completely ignoring the 7 stars caterpillar grass. At that moment, a cold light flashed across the faceless pill fiend's face, revealing a pair of bewitching eyes. They stared fixedly at the prey in Long Fei Yi's hands. A fox. That was Han Yunxi's first thought. Those were clearly a pair of bewitching eyes. Isn't this pill fiend very old? How can he have such bewitching eyes? At that moment, an arrogant laugh came from the side. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, you still haven't asked whether this crown prince agrees or not." Following the voice, they saw an extraordinarily domineering man. His facial features were deep and imposing, and his figure was tall and powerful. He was dressed in a luxurious black robe with golden edges, which accentuated his nobility and mystery. He walked over unhurriedly, his cold and arrogant gaze sweeping past Long Fei Yi before impudently sizing up Han Yunxi. He seemed to know her identity, and although there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, it quickly disappeared. Han Yunxi hated this kind of arrogant and impolite sizing up the most. Cold as she looked at him, she knew that he was a crown prince, but she didn't know which country he was from. "Does Crown Prince Yi not agree?" Long Fei Yi asked. Based on Long Fei Yi's cold tone, the words Crown Prince Yi seemed to be deliberately said for Han Yunxi to know who this man was. So it was him. Han Yunxi had heard of this name before. This was the Crown Prince of Western Ju, Duanmu Baiye. People called him Crown Prince Yi. Unlike Tianning's Crown Prince, Western Jew's crown prince Yi was famous throughout Cloud Realm continent for his arrogant, high-profile, sinister, and cruel ways. Before he even ascended to the throne, he'd already eradicated all dissidents in court. Western Jew country was located on the west side of Tianning country. It was Tianning country's ally by marriage. Logically speaking, Duanmu Baiye and Long Fei Yi should be on good terms, but judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to be on good terms. Duanmu Baiye was 1.8 meters tall and was about the same height as Long Fei Yi. He walked closer to Long Fei Yi and gently pressed on Long Fei Yi's shoulder. He deliberately slowed down his tone and said word by word, "No. Answer." But as soon as he finished speaking, Long Fei Yi's shoulder exploded with a powerful force that viciously shook Duanmu Baiye's hand away. At the same time, Duanmu Baiye lost his footing and backed up 2 steps. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Long Fei Yi, do you know what first come, first served means? Your lordship doesn't." Long Fei Yi's tone was even more arrogant and haughty than his own. So speaking, he rushed in front of Duanmu Baiye and wanted to snatch the 7 stars caterpillar grass from his hands. Seeing this, Han Yunxi gave a start before she grew amused. Long Fei Yi was so barbaric and domineering. She liked it. Let's see what Duanmu Baiye will use to exchange with His Excellency Pill Fiend after he gets the 7 stars caterpillar grass. Just then, Duanmu Baiye's shoulder was enough to prove that he wasn't Long Fei Yi's match. He immediately retreated, dodging as he shouted, "Long Fei Yi, you're petty and lowly. The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. Only the winner had the right to determine whether someone was despicable or noble." Long Fei Yi didn't stop. Instead, each move was more vicious than the last. His speed was so fast that Duanmu Baiye didn't have time to talk nonsense. Han Yunxi watched from the side with fear. Time and time again, she saw Long Fei Yi about to snatch the item, but unfortunately, he was always dodged. Pill Fiend sat high above, lazily leaning on the main seat. His long and narrow eyes were slightly narrowed as he watched with relish. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi grabbed Duanmu Baiye's wrist with one hand and grabbed the brocade box in his hand with the other. But who knew that at this critical moment, Pill Fiend would suddenly shout, "Stop." His voice was deliberately drawn out in an indolent manner. Long Fei Yi was distracted, and Duanmu Baiye dodged. He then said sternly, "Pill Fiend, when did your Medicine Ghost Valley allow outsiders to casually fight?" Medicine Ghost Valley had Medicine Ghost Valley's rules. Outsiders were not allowed to casually fight. "Haha, I only wanted to see your martial arts. Crown Prince Yi, you've disappointed me a little." His Excellency Pill Fiend sighed. "You." Duanmu Baiye angrily wanted to step forward, but who would have thought that Lord Pill Fiend would slowly stretch out a bony hand from his black robe. It was like the hand of a 1,000-year-old demon, playing with several dazzling butterfly darts in his hand. Without a doubt, this was a warning. Duanmu Baiye could only suppress his anger. Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with displeasure. He withdrew his hand and asked cold, "Pill Fiend, who do you want to trade with?" "Pill Fiend, there's more than one poisonous python in the world, but there's only one 7 stars caterpillar grass. It's like a grass and a worm, but it's neither grass nor worm. You must think carefully. Also, this prince arrived first." Duanmu Baiye immediately reminded him. "There are many poisonous pythons, but there's only one 500-year-old poisonous python." Long Fei Yi also reminded him. "Ayaya." Pill Fiend lightly sighed again. His voice was faint, as if it came from the depths of hell. Han Yunxi couldn't help but shiver again. She observed Pill Fiend's hand. No matter how she looked at it, it didn't match with his foxy and narrow eyes. Long Fei and Duanmu Baiye didn't say a word as they allowed Pill Fiend to sigh. Han Yunxi watched from the side, unable to guess whose item His Excellency Pill Fiend would choose. Unexpectedly, His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed strangely. "Hee, I want both of them. How about you two continue to fight?" As he spoke, he even cautiously told Long Fei Yi, "Qin Wang, this lord allows you to rob, but the item you snatch will belong to this lord. How about it?" Han Yunxi almost spat out when she heard this. This rotten old man with no integrity was too greedy and too treacherous. However, she liked it. In any case, It was just making Long Fei Yi put in a bit more effort. They wouldn't lose out. Duanmu Baiye's face instantly paled. He clenched his fists and angrily said, Jiyu Qi Sho, do you want to break the rules of Medicine Ghost Valley? Pill Fiend looked as if he suddenly realized something. I can't break the rules. How about you two fight outside the valley? Duanmu Baiye almost vomited blood when he heard this. Long Fei Yi shrugged. That's fine too. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a clear voice rang out. Big brother, are you inside? Big brother? Which family's little sister is looking for her big brother? Han Yunxi was puzzled. She saw a white-clothed girl walk in with light steps. She was born with an otherworldly beauty, like a fairy who didn't eat the food of mortals. Her small dimples at the corners of her mouth didn't lose the liveliness of a young girl. The beauty of a fairy and the spirit of a fairy were perfectly displayed on her body. Han Yunxi immediately knew who she was. She was Duanmu Baiye's younger sister, Western Jew's Princess Changle, who was adored by everyone, Duanmu Yao. It was said that after this princess came of age, the number of nobles from various countries who came to the Western Jew imperial palace to ask for her hand in marriage increased with each passing year. However, this princess had high standards and hadn't even looked at a single one of them. Han Yunxi remembered that she had never seen this princess before. However, why did her figure seem so familiar? As soon as Duanmu Yarrow entered and saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, she stared blankly. She didn't expect that her senior brother would also come here. Moreover, he had even brought Han Yunxi. A trace of jealousy flashed through Duanmu Yarrow's eyes. She pretended that the previous unpleasantness with Long Fei Yi had not occurred. Striding forward, she deliberately bumped into Han Yunxi and snatched the position beside Long Fei Yi. Pleasantly surprised, she asked, Senior brother, why are you here? At this moment, Han Yunxi knew that the white-clothed girl who had courted death in the Snake Valley was her, so she was Long Fei Yi's junior sister. Could it be that she had been quarreling with her senior brother when she had fallen into the poisonous gas of the python in the Snake Valley? It seemed that her little junior sister's jealousy was very great. When Duanmu Yarrow arrived, Duanmu Baiye's eyes flashed with calculation. He smiled and said, Yarrow Yao, your senior brother wants to fight with us for the lifeblood pill. Why don't you fight with him? Duanmu Yarrow was shocked. Frowning, she asked, Senior brother, is this true? What do you want the lifeblood pill for? A trace of impatience flashed through Long Fei Yi's eyes. Just as he was about to speak, Han Yunxi beat him to it. She stood beside Long Fei Yi and looked at Duanmu Yarrow with raised brows. She earnestly said, Your Highness, this concubine must have the lifeblood pill. Duanmu Yarrow was shocked once again. How could this be? Senior brother was actually fighting for a woman? And he was even fighting with her? No, she absolutely wouldn't allow it. Moreover, she couldn't stand Han Yunxi calling herself this concubine in front of her senior brother. Senior brother, the lifeblood pill is mine. It wasn't easy for me to find the 7 stars caterpillar grass to exchange for it. You're not allowed to fight with me. Duanmu Yarrow's commanding tone was overbearing and spoiled. However, Long Fei Yi only pretended not to hear and ignored both Han Yunxi and Duanmu Yarrow. He coldly looked at Duanmu Baiye. Crown Prince Yi, since Lord Pill Fiend has such intentions, why don't you two go out and fight? If it was before, perhaps Duanmu Baiye would have agreed. However, after exchanging a few blows, Duanmu Baiye clearly knew that he wouldn't be able to gain the upper hand. A trace of insidiousness flashed through his eyes. Duanmu Baiye smiled. Since Yarrow is here, you two should have a good spar. In my opinion, it's just a spar. There's no need to leave the valley. As he spoke, he looked at Lord Pill Fiend. Lord Pill Fiend, what do you think? Lord Pill Fiend chuckled strangely. A spar between senior brother and junior sister, hehe. This lord likes it very much. Hearing this, Duanmu Baiye immediately handed the 7 stars caterpillar grass to Duanmu Yarrow and informed her of Lord Pill Fiend's conditions. Duanmu Yarrow was shocked and immediately grasped the 7 stars caterpillar grass tightly. Lord Pill Fiend. Long Fei Yi was about to retort. However, Lord Pill Fiend laughed heartily. Your Highness Duke of Qin, this lord is very much looking forward to it. As he spoke, he ordered the servants to serve tea, deciding to properly enjoy a good show. Long Feiye narrowed his eyes dangerously at the sight of such a shameless thing. Han Yunshi silently cursed him in her heart. Let's have Duanmu Yarrow come out instead. It was impossible to explain things clearly between martial brother and junior sister. Forget about the results, even the process of a duel between martial brother and junior sister was hard to predict. Duanmu Yarrow looked like she was going to risk her life to protect the 7 stars caterpillar grass. Would Long Feiye let Duanmu Yarrow do it? Although his attitude towards Duanmu Yarrow had been very cold, his performance in the Snake Valley had been very positive. His anxiousness was clearly because he was afraid that Duanmu Yarrow would be hurt, so much so that he had even left her to die at the side. Han Yunshi thought of this and silently shed a tear in her heart. Thus, she threw caution to the wind. In any case, she was only responsible for saving people. Whether or not she could obtain the lifeblood pill wasn't within the scope of her responsibility. Chapter 61. With this thought, Han Yunshi felt much more at ease. She quietly retreated to the side and sat down, ready to watch the show. Your Highness Duke of Qin, Chunxie looks forward to your performance. Since Pill Fiend had spoken, Duanmu Baiye's lips curled into a mocking smile. Your Highness Duke of Qin, it's just a spar. Don't take it too seriously. After he finished speaking, he retreated to the side. The room fell silent. Everyone's gaze fell on Long Feiye, nervous and expectant. Unexpectedly, Long Feiye's first reaction caught everyone off guard. His icy gaze fell on Duanmu Yarrow's hand, his expression grim and determined. His figure suddenly flashed and closed in on Duanmu Yarrow. This guy really wanted to steal. Han Yunshi jumped in fright, but she quickly recovered. She really wanted to cheer for Long Feiye. Although she knew that Long Feiye was only doing this to obtain the lifeblood pill, she was still very happy. Senior brother, junior sister, whatever, they could go to hell. She decided to forgive this guy for his actions in Snake Valley. The most surprised were the siblings, Duanmu Baiye and Duanmu Yarrow. Duanmu Yarrow instantly retreated, her eyes turning red. Although senior brother always ignored her, that was because of senior brother's cold temperament. After so many years, senior brother had never snatched anything from her. Today, he actually stole something from her for Han Yunshi. He wanted to steal something from her and give it to Han Yunshi. No. Duanmu Yarrow couldn't accept this reality. She fiercely glared at Han Yunshi, wishing she could rush over and tear that woman apart right now. Duanmu Baiye angrily said, Long Feiye, are you trying to steal a woman's things? That thing isn't hers. Long Feiye retorted domineeringly. Duanmu Baiye's despicable behavior left him speechless. Duanmu Yarrow huffed and looked at Long Feiye in a fit of pique. She simply hid the 7 stars caterpillar grass in her chest, then puffed out her chest and sucked in her stomach. She fearlessly said, Senior brother, this is a rare opportunity. Let's have a good competition. If you want to steal it, then come. Suddenly, the room became silent, and then Old Man Pill Fiend laughed loudly. His voice was sometimes strange, sometimes deep and old, and sometimes bright and cheerful, filling the entire room. Good idea, ha ha ha. Han Yunshi's mouth twitched as she watched. Duanmu Yarrow, you win. Have you no shame? A man's despicableness can never compare to a woman's despicableness. Long Feiye's face darkened, and a hint of disgust flashed through his eyes. Both sides were in a deadlock. As His Excellency Pill Fiend's laughter gradually stopped, the room fell into silence. Pill Fiend sat loftily in the host's seat, his mood extremely cheerful. It had been a long time since Pill Fiend Valley had been so lively. He swept his gaze over the crowd before resting on Han Yunshi, his long, narrow eyes narrowing playfully. Everyone was standing and in a deadlock. This woman was interesting. She was actually sitting and watching the show like him. Thus, in the silence, His Excellency Pill Fiend opened his mouth, his tone slow and leisurely. Your Highness Duke of Qin, isn't it more appropriate for a woman to steal from a woman? These words were undoubtedly aimed at Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi's eyes widened as she looked at His Excellency Pill Fiend. What was this old thing trying to do? Duanmu Baye and Duanmu Yarrow both looked at Han Yunxi. Only now did they notice that she was actually sitting leisurely to the side. Seeing Han Yunxi's leisurely attitude, Duanmu Yarrow became even more furious. What right did she have? Duanmu Yarrow had already seen Han Yunxi's cowardice and incompetence in Snake Valley. She didn't want to fight with her senior brother, but now His Excellency Pill Fiend had given her a good idea. Her lips curved in ridicule, Duanmu Yarrow sneered. Han Yunxi, if you want something, then come and steal it yourself. This princess will give you 3 moves. Long Fei Yi said indifferently, His Excellency Pill Fiend, she doesn't know martial arts. Doesn't know martial arts? His Excellency Pill Fiend seemed somewhat suspicious. Where did a woman who didn't know martial arts get the confidence to sit here so calmly and leisurely? How could Duanmu Yarrow know the truth about Long Fei Yi wanting the lifeblood pill? Seeing him so protective, her eyes seemed to be dipped in poison. If you don't have the ability, then don't come out and make a fool of yourself. Han Yunxi was satisfied with Long Fei Yi's performance. At least he hadn't changed his stance from beginning to end. Seeing Duanmu Yarrow so arrogant, she wasn't anxious. She slowly stood up and put on a pitiful expression. His Excellency Pill Fiend, it's so rude for a woman to get physical. Besides, I don't know martial arts. How about we compete in something else? Before Pill Fiend could say anything, Duanmu Yarrow angrily asked, Han Yunxi, what do you mean? Who are you calling rude? Whoever minds, I'm talking about. Han Yunxi said calmly. Duanmu Yarrow was about to lose her temper when Han Yunxi quickly added, as the Grand Princess of Western Ju, your name spreads throughout the country. You're perfect in all 3 aspects, literary, martial, and physical. You must have excellent self-cultivation, so how could you be rude? Duanmu Yarrow was about to explode when she heard those words. No matter how angry she was, she couldn't express it. She could only suppress it in her heart. Duanmu Baye narrowed his eyes. Although he was angry, there was also a trace of admiration in his eyes. This woman who didn't know martial arts was even more formidable than a woman who knew martial art. Long Fei Yi's lips curved up slightly, but His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed out loud in delight. He loved this show too much. Duanmu Yarrow couldn't vent her anger. She took a few deep breaths before forcing herself to calm down. Fine, Han Yunxi, this princess agrees. You can compete in anything you want. Han Yunxi was right. She was one of Cloud Realm Continent's famous talented women. She was perfect in all 3 aspects, literary, martial, and physical. This weak woman's competition was nothing more than child's play in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She'd grown tired of those things since she was young. Han Yunxi was just the first wife's daughter who'd fallen out of favor from a small family. What could she use to compete with her? Han Yunxi knitted her brows in thought. For the sake of fairness, Your Excellency Pill Fiend should decide the competition. Naturally, His Excellency Pill Fiend agreed. No matter who won or lost, he'd still get 2 treasures. Watching women fight was much better than watching men fight. Very good, then it's decided. He laughed strangely again, seeming to be very excited. This Excellency will set the questions, so you 2 can compete, but he was stuck here. What should they compete in? His Excellency Pill Fiend immediately quieted down. Having gotten used to his strange laughter, Han Yunxi didn't find it so terrifying anymore. But now she suddenly realized that this strange thing was most terrifying when he was quiet. Although she was far away, she could still sense the mysterious and terrifying aura emanating from his body. Heaven knows what kind of terrifying questions he'd set. Duanmu Yarrow raised her chin and gave Han Yunxi a provocative look. She was determined to win and was extremely arrogant. No matter what the competition was, she had to perform well in front of her senior brother and humiliate this Qin Wangfei in front of him. Although Han Yunxi wasn't confident, anything was better than martial arts. She probably wasn't even as strong as Duanmu Yarrow. Han Yunxi might lose in person, but she didn't lose in spirit. She arched a brow and looked back provocatively. So what if she was a princess? She could even take care of her own country's princess, to say nothing of a neighboring country's. After a long time, His Excellency Pill Fiend slowly raised his head. This Excellency has thought it through. Everyone immediately looked over. His Excellency Pill Fiend was in a good mood as he laughed strangely. Find medicine. You too can compete to find medicine. Find medicine? Find what medicine? How do we find it? Duanmu Yarrow was very surprised. This was completely outside of her expectations. This Excellency will provide a prescription and a book of medicinal sketches for you to find in the entire Medicine Ghost Valley. Whoever finds all the ingredients in the prescription first wins. His Excellency Pill Fiend said smugly. He was very satisfied with his idea. A trace of calculation flitted through Duanmu Yarrow's eyes. She didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients, but what about Han Yunxi? This woman was the Han family's trash. Although rumors about her becoming a genius doctor overnight were flying all over the Ning Imperial City, Duanmu Yarrow didn't believe it. She felt that it was nothing more than a rumor spread by this woman herself. Otherwise, with so many people coming to seek medical treatment, why didn't she see a single one? Therefore, Han Yunxi should be the same as her. She didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients. If Han Yunxi didn't know anything about medicinal ingredients like her, then wouldn't she have an advantage? After all, the Medicine Ghost Valley was so big. Finding medicinal ingredients all over the valley was a very tiring task. Judging from Han Yunxi's frail body, she definitely wouldn't be able to bear it. Even if her body could bear it, her speed was far slower than hers. Thinking of this, Duanmu Yarrow immediately said flatteringly, His Excellency Pill Fiend is indeed an expert. Even the questions you come up with are different from ordinary people. However, I don't know if we can let outsiders help us find medicine. Since it's a competition between the two of you, naturally no outsiders can help. His Excellency Pill Fiend seriously replied. Hearing this, Duanmu Yarrow became even more confident. Without Long Fei Yi's help, how far could Han Yunxi walk with her pair of legs? How fast could she walk? If she flew with her Qinggong, she could walk for half a day. His Excellency Pill Fiend, I'm willing to challenge you. Duanmu Yarrow was very straightforward. Pill Fiend was very satisfied. Looking at Han Yunxi, he asked, Qin Wangfei, what about you? It's a bit difficult. Han Yunxi sighed softly. You can also admit defeat right now. Duanmu Yarrow immediately taunted. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi earnestly replied, although it's a bit difficult, I'm still from a medical family. Princess Changle, don't you think it's unfair for us to compete in finding medicinal ingredients? Smiling mockingly, Duanmu Yarrow said in a low voice, it's said that you're the first good-for-nothing in the history of the Han family. How pitiful. There's no harm in this princess letting you win. So you're saying that Princess Changle feels that this competition is very fair? Han Yunxi asked again. Duanmu Baiye listened from the side and felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to speak, Duanmu Yarrow, who had a guilty conscience, was afraid that Han Yunxi would bring up the issue of her physical strength. Impatiently, she said, it's very fair. If you agree, then let's begin immediately. Han Yunxi appeared helpless, nodding her head. Okay, since there was someone who wanted to court a snub, what could she do? Han Yunxi definitely wouldn't tell Duanmu Yarrow that when she was studying Chinese medicine, there was a period of time where she was specifically trained to search for medicinal ingredients in the mountains. Medicinal ingredients had different growth habits and grew in different locations. Moreover, some medicinal ingredients grew together, while others absolutely couldn't grow together. As long as she was familiar with the growth habits and patterns of these medicinal ingredients, not to mention a valley, even if she was given an entire mountain, she would still be able to find the medicinal ingredients in a short period of time. To make a living, how could she not have a few tricks up her sleeve? Hearing Han Yunxi agree, Duanmu Yarrow's lips curled into a snicker. She couldn't wait to see her lose Long Fei Yi's poisonous python pill. Very good. Since you've agreed, then you're not allowed to go back on your word. If you go back on your word, this Darren will be very unhappy. Pill Fiend's laughter seemed to be both a joke and a warning. Finished speaking, he lazily got up and walked gracefully towards his desk to write down a prescription. Medicine Ghost Valley had so many medicinal ingredients. What kind of prescription would he write down? Chapter 62. His Excellency Pill Fiend's bony hands were basically just skin and bones. The joints of his bones were particularly prominent, and they were black in color, causing others to feel their hair stand on end. However, such a hand was able to grasp the brush in a proper manner, and the words he wrote were vigorous and majestic with an unrestrained attitude. Soon, His Excellency Pill Fiend had filled an entire piece of paper with more than 20 medicinal ingredients. Seeing this, Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with a complicated look, and he said unhappily, "How long do you want them to search for the lifeblood pill for emergency use?" His Excellency Pill Fiend, "We can't afford to waste time waiting for people who need to be saved," Duanmu Baiye also spoke up. Cough cough. His Excellency Pill Fiend coughed a few times, unhappy. There weren't many medicinal ingredients, and they only needed to search for a while. Wasn't that fun? They needed to search for at least 10 days to half a month. That way, he could watch beauties search for medicinal ingredients every day and wouldn't be bored. As for whether they saved lives or not, what did that have to do with him? There were many people waiting outside the valley to be saved. If you think it's too much, then don't play. His Excellency Pill Fiend sneered. This time, Duanmu Baiye and Duanmu Yarrow were anxious. Just as they were about to agree, Long Fei Yi said, "All right." After saying that, he actually turned to leave. His Excellency Pill Fiend suddenly narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Long Fei Yi's back, emitting a dangerous aura from head to toe. Long Fei Yi could feel a powerful aura pressing against him from behind, but his expression was still cold and arrogant. His footsteps were firm, and he even urged Han Yunxi, still not leaving. Competing to find medicinal ingredients was Han Yunxi's strong point. Long Fei Yi didn't want to refuse, but if there were so many medicinal ingredients, Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to beat Han Yunxi in terms of physical strength. In the end, she would still lose. Long Fei Yi wouldn't let this step pass. Of course, Han Yunxi was well aware of her own strengths and weaknesses. She couldn't help but admire Long Fei Yi's boldness. She followed him without another word. Seeing that the two were really about to leave, the anger in Pill Fiend's eyes grew more and more intense. Even Duanmu Yarrow, who was closest to him, felt inexplicably afraid. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had already reached the door and were about to leave. Suddenly, a butterfly dart flew out from His Excellency Pill Fiend's hand. Its trajectory couldn't be seen as it approached Long Fei Yi in the blink of an eye. However, Long Fei Yi didn't even turn around. An invisible force shook out from his back and directly shook the butterfly dart back to His Excellency Pill Fiend. Seeing this, Duanmu Yarrow and Duanmu Baiye were shocked. They didn't expect that in just a few months, Long Fei Yi's martial arts had improved so much. His Excellency Pill Fiend had been longing for the poisonous python pill for many years, so how could he let Long Fei Yi really leave? Moreover, the lifeblood pill wasn't unique to Medicine Ghost Valley. Other places should have it as well. With Long Fei Yi's ability, it wasn't impossible for him to find it. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't even look back as he stepped out of the door, His Excellency Pill Fiend finally opened his mouth cold. "Long Fei Yi, this Excellency promises you." At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi returned. Needless to say, these two really did look like husband and wife. Both of them were calm and composed. His Excellency Pill Fiend looked at them cold. A trace of hatred flashed through his eyes. "Long Fei Yi, you win this time. You better never come and beg me for the secret medicine of Medicine Ghost Valley's poison sec. Moreover, this Excellency will take revenge for you right now." Medicine Ghost Valley's Excellency Pill Fiend tore up the first secret prescription and picked up the brush again. The more anxious Long Fei Yi was, the more he wanted to stall for time. He didn't need to write down a lot of medicinal ingredients, just a few. He could make it so that Han Yunxi and Duanmu Yarrow wouldn't be able to find it for a year and a half. When the time came, he wanted to see if Long Fei Yi or Duanmu Baiye would be the first to panic. His Excellency Pill Fiend's brush hovered over the white paper. This time, he didn't write immediately. Instead, he seriously pondered. There were many kinds of medicines that were difficult to find. Some looked like ordinary medicines but were extremely good at hiding. They were clearly right in front of your eyes but couldn't be found. Some had very harsh growth conditions and couldn't be found, let alone medicinal ingredients. Some were rare and had a long growth cycle. At most, there were 1 or 2 stalks in the valley. Naturally, His Excellency Pill Fiend had to write down all kinds of medicines that met all kinds of conditions. Everyone was waiting. Duanmu Yarrow glanced at Han Yunshi several times, her gaze cold and disdainful. Han Yunshi didn't want to play the battle of gazes with her this time. She moved closer to Long Fei Yi's side on purpose. Seeing this, Duanmu Yarrow was so angry that she immediately turned her head away. She didn't want to look anymore. Long Fei Yi lowered his head and looked disdainfully at Han Yunshi, then took a step back to reject her. Han Yunshi was instantly embarrassed. However, Duanmu Yarrow didn't see this scene. Han Yunshi felt a little stifled. She thought that if it wasn't Long Fei Yi who wanted the lifeblood pill today, but she wanted it, he would probably be the one to stand by and watch with folded arms. In fact, there was no need to suspect that this guy and Duanmu Yarrow were martial brothers or sisters. This guy was cold and emotionless to everyone. In his heart, there were no exceptions. Finally, after a long wait, His Excellency Pill Fiend made up his mind. He picked up the brush and wrote down 3 types of medicines on the white paper. He made 2 copies and handed them to Han Yunshi and Duanmu Yarrow. Han Yunshi didn't even look when Duanmu Yarrow read them out one by one. 7 Death's Hawktail, Simple White Yimmy, Ghost Hits the Wall. This. Hearing these names, Han Yunshi was instantly dumbstruck. She abruptly looked at the prescription in her hand and read it word by word to make sure there was no mistake. Heavens, it was actually these 3 medicines. Han Yunshi was so excited that she wanted to cry. Thus, in the eyes of outsiders, she looked like she wanted to cry but had no tears. Seeing her like this, Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with a complicated look. He couldn't figure out this woman. However, Duanmu Yarrow laughed. Qin Wangfei, you come from a medical family. You've seen these 3 medicines before, right? Han Yunshi took a deep breath before shaking her head. I've never seen him before. Duanmu Yarrow was instantly filled with confidence. Very good, this was the time to compete in physical strength. Very quickly, His Excellency Pill Fiend ordered people to deliver 2 medicinal herb atlases. How is it? Shall we begin? His Excellency Pill Fiend asked impatiently. No problem. Duanmu Yarrow had been itching to give it a try since a long time ago. As long as she had the atlases for comparison, with her speed and physical strength, even digging 3 feet into the ground of Medicine Ghost Valley wouldn't be a problem. Han Yunshi tightly gripped the atlases. Amen. Good, begin. This Excellency will wait here. Before His Excellency Pill Fiend could finish speaking, Duanmu Yarrow took the atlases and rushed out the door in a flash. So fast. Ahahaha. This Excellency is looking forward to it. His Excellency Pill Fiend was laughing so hard that he was about to dance with joy. Of course, he was more concerned about Han Yunshi. Who told Long Fei Yi to offend him? Seeing Duanmu Yarrow move so quickly, Han Yunshi gave a start before recovering her senses. She grabbed the medicinal plant diagrams and ran outside, but her running speed made His Excellency Pill Fiend anxious for her sake. His Excellency Pill Fiend stood up and followed beside Han Yunshi. Although he seemed to be walking slowly, he was actually faster than Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi, you can't be so slow. This Excellency might as well tell you that in the entire Medicine Ghost Valley, there's only 1 wall-hitting ghost. If you're late, you'll lose. Han Yunshi turned around and pretended to be shocked. Really? His Excellency Pill Fiend smiled until his long and flirtatious eyes narrowed into a straight line. This Excellency has never lied to a woman. Then many thanks. Han Yunshi smiled sweetly and sped up. When she finally reached the courtyard, Duanmu Yarrow had already disappeared. Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Baiye had been waiting outside for a long time. Seeing that Han Yunshi had only just arrived, Duanmu Baiye's lips curled into a mocking smile as he teased, Qin Wangfei, you're so slow. Are you very confident? Unexpectedly, Han Yunshi actually turned around and regained her excited expression from when she saw the prescription. She nodded repeatedly, very much agreeing with Duanmu Baiye's words. This time, she didn't look like she wanted to cry but had no tears. Instead, She was truly excited. Duanmu Baye stared blankly. What was wrong with this woman? What did her expression mean? He had to admit that even Long Fei Yi was confused by Han Yunxi. What kind of reaction was this? Did she recognize these 3 herbs, or did she just happen to not recognize them? Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi actually ignored them. She found a stone stool to the side and sat down, gently stroking her chest to calm herself down. Seeing this, even the smug His Excellency Pill Fiend quieted down. This woman couldn't be thinking of directly giving up, right? If that was the case, then he should prepare to properly mock Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi really wasn't deliberately mystifying things. She was really, really excited. She couldn't even use words to express it. Looking at His Excellency Pill Fiend, she wanted to pounce over and give him 32 likes. His Excellency Pill Fiend was truly a genius. No, he was a demon genius. The 3 herbs he wrote down were all poisons. Moreover, the most important thing was that these 3 herbs were all in this courtyard. One had to know that this place was the easiest place for people to overlook, so that idiot Duanmu Yarrow immediately rushed out. There were 2 types of poisonous herbs. One type had to be boiled to extract the poison, so it was classified as a hidden poisonous herb. The other type would reveal the poison even when it sprouted, so it was classified as a dominant poisonous herb. Unfortunately, the 3 herbs that His Excellency Pill Fiend wrote down all belonged to the latter type. When Han Yunxi entered the Medicine Ghost Valley, the detoxification system had warned her several times that there were many poisons in this valley. And when she entered this courtyard, the detoxification system had warned her again. She was most familiar with vegetable-type poisons. She didn't need to examine these dominant poisonous herbs at all. She could casually sweep her eyes over them and know what kind of poisonous herb it was. Duanmu Yarrow, go look carefully. 7 Death's Hawktail and Single White Yimmy aren't ordinary herbs, but very rare ones. Even if there were a second or third one in this valley, His Excellency Pill Fiend himself might not be able to find it in a short amount of time. And there was only one wall-hitting ghost. It should have been specially cultivated by His Excellency Pill Fiend, so it would never be found outside. Leaving Long Fei Yi, Duanmu Baye, and His Excellency Pill Fiend to look at her in astonishment, Han Yunxi patted her chest. Such an exciting matter, give her a bit of time to calm down. Finally, Duanmu Baye couldn't bear it anymore and asked unhappily, Qin Wangfei, are you still not going to look? Are you going to admit defeat? Even at death's door, she was still arrogant. In a moment, just wait to cry. Han Yunxi stood up and smiled. Crown Prince Yi, Princess Changle is impatient. Why are you also impatient? As she spoke, she handed over the medicinal herb atlas that she hadn't flipped through to Long Fei Yi. Your Imperial Highness, help me hold this. A trace of amusement flashed through Long Fei Yi's eyes. He did not speak, silently taking the atlas. Duanmu Baye was speechless, his heart growing increasingly uneasy. Could it be that this woman was confident? However, this thought was quickly rejected by him. Impossible. Even if she recognized those medicinal herbs, it was impossible for her to immediately find them. Where did her self-confidence come from? She was only deliberately mystifying things. Thinking of this, Duanmu Baye crossed his arms, his expression cold. He would wait and see. He did not believe that Han Yunxi would fool around. However, His Excellency Pill Fiend, who had a guilty conscience, felt uneasy. This woman was sitting in the courtyard, not leaving. Could it be that she had discovered something? Chapter 63. Looking at Han Yunxi, who didn't seem to intend to leave the courtyard, Pill Fiend couldn't help feeling suspicious. However, he still didn't believe that Han Yunxi could find the 3 herbs. He had racked his brains to think of the 3 herbs, and they all grew in this courtyard. No matter how smart a person was, they wouldn't think of it so quickly. Besides, even if Han Yunxi suspected that the herbs grew in this courtyard, she still had to look for them, Pill Fiend thought, and his eyes fell on the herb atlas in Long Fei Yi's hands. Han Yunxi hadn't even flipped through it. Even if she suspected that the 3 herbs were in this courtyard, she still had to spend time looking for them, and she might not be able to find them. Thinking of this, Pill Fiend felt more relieved. He was still very confident in the question he had set. He glanced at the expressionless and calm Long Fei Yi, and his flirtatious eyes revealed an evil smile. He thought to himself, let's see how arrogant this guy can be. If Han Yunxi can't find the herbs in 3 days, he, who is anxious to save people, will have to beg obediently by then. Unexpectedly, just as Pill Fiend was feeling smug, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He subconsciously looked back and met Han Yunxi's smiling eyes. Pill Fiend was slightly startled and puzzled. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi's beautiful eyes turned and looked at the stone steps on the right side behind him. The stone steps were covered with moss, and there was a circle of dog's tail around the edge of the moss. Following Han Yunxi's gaze, Pill Fiend's eyes fell on the dog's tail grass. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and almost stopped. It should be known that the 7 Deaths iris was mixed in this circle of dog's tail grass. Could it be, if he could see Pill Fiend's face, he would definitely see his tightly knitted brows. No, this must be a coincidence. Han Yunxi was a good-for-nothing. How could she recognize the 7 Deaths iris without looking at the herb atlas? It should be known that many pharmacists didn't even know what the 7 Deaths iris looked like. His Excellency Pill Fiend quickly withdrew his line of sight, a malicious glint flashing through his eyes. He firmly believed that Han Yunxi couldn't find her. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi stood up and personally walked over. This time, His Excellency Pill Fiend's line of sight immediately followed her. He saw Han Yunxi accurately grasping an herb that was very similar to a green dog's tail and was about to uproot it. "Stop!" His Excellency Pill Fiend cried out in alarm. This voice was not the least bit eccentric, nor was it the least bit deep or old. It was very, very fierce, and one could vaguely hear a trace of his true voice. Han Yunxi didn't let go. She smiled and said, 7 Deadly Iris, right? Although she had already grasped it, His Excellency Pill Fiend was still somewhat unable to accept it from her own mouth. Was this the rhythm of a piece of trash going against the heavens? Pill Fiend narrowed his eyes and didn't answer for a long time. Han Yunxi shrugged and pretended to pull it out. His Excellency Pill Fiend was furious and had no choice but to answer, yes. As soon as these words came out, Duanmu Baye suddenly stood up from the side with an expression of disbelief. Han Yunxi, Han Yunxi, how did you know that the 7 Deadly Iris was in the courtyard, and how did you find it? His Excellency Pill Fiend was also very curious. This woman didn't even look at the atlas and found it with a single glance. She didn't even have the time to look for it and seemed to have found it with a single glance. Because I'm smart. Han Yunxi smiled and let go. This 7 Deadly Iris was still very young. She was someone who loved medicine and wouldn't recklessly waste a natural treasure. Of course, the more important reason was that she couldn't afford to compensate His Excellency Pill Fiend. Smart. I think you're cheating. You're clearly a piece of trash, so how did you know about the 7 Deadly Iris? Duanmu Baye mocked and ridiculed. Just now, someone personally said that it was fair. What, are you going to act shamelessly now? Crown Prince Yi, I only found one. Don't be so unconfident in your sister, Han Yunxi joked. Her words made Duanmu Baye speechless. If he continued, it would undoubtedly be a slap to his and Yaro's face. Heh, this crown prince doesn't believe that you can find a second one, Duanmu Baye said hatefully. This lord also doesn't believe that you can find a second one. His Excellency Pill Fiend narrowed his eyes and stared at Han Yunxi, his gaze never leaving her. His voice and gaze were faint. Even if it was such a coincidence that Han Yunxi knew about the 7 Deadly Iris, she couldn't possibly recognize Simple by Yimi, right? He didn't believe this. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi faintly smiled. Her quick-witted and crafty eyes moved again as she looked at the grass under the fence in front of her. With his first experience, even Duanmu Baye nervously followed her to look. Duanmu Baye looked over, but he didn't understand anything and couldn't see anything. However, His Excellency Pill Fiend instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. His slightly narrowed eyes suddenly became serious. He didn't need to follow Han Yunxi's gaze to know what was in the grass under the fence in front of them. Some fine wildflowers bloomed in that small patch of grass. Among them, There was only one white flower. It was very inconspicuous, but it was the priceless Simple by Yimi grass. Could it be that Han Yunshi even recognized Simple by Yimi? Han Yunshi withdrew her gaze and looked at His Excellency Pill Fiend's stiff body. She smiled especially brightly. Simple by Yimi, do you still need me to point it out? His Excellency Pill Fiend didn't answer. His gaze was firmly fixed on her eyes, as if it was really nailed there. His Excellency Pill Fiend had never failed in the field of medicine. Although he didn't personally participate in the competition today, he was the one who came up with the questions. He originally didn't intend for others to find it, but he didn't expect that Han Yunshi would actually find 2 plants in less than an hour. Although she said she was looking for it, she actually didn't look for it at all, okay? She even recognized Simple by Yimi. What happened to the so-called trash? Even if she was an extremely powerful pharmacist, recognizing the 7 Deaths hawthorn was already very impressive. Simple by Yimi was a medicine even rarer than the 7 Deaths hawthorn, and it was also a poison. His Excellency Pill Fiend, that little white flower is Simple by Yimi. Do you want me to go over and point it out? It's that white one, just one. Han Yunshi deliberately explained in detail. His Excellency Pill Fiend took a deep breath. He racked his brains to come up with this question, but it was actually so easily solved by someone. There was also the last poisonous herb, Ghost Hits the Wall. Could it be that she had already found it long ago? His Excellency Pill Fiend still didn't reply, but Duanmu Baye abruptly picked up Long Fei's illustrated collection of medicinal plants from the coffee table. He flipped to the marked pages and found a description of Shan by Yimi. He deliberately walked over to compare. With this comparison, Duanmu Baye was stupefied on the spot. It really was Simple by Yimi. Crown Prince Yi, it's correct, right? Han Yunshi asked with a smile. The atlas fell to the ground. Duanmu Baye slowly stood up, his face frighteningly dark. You also found the last Ghost Hits the Wall? A trace of craftiness flashed through Han Yunshi's eyes, and she suddenly looked to the right. Duanmu Baye reflexively looked to the right, and then Han Yunshi looked to the left. Duanmu Baye also turned to the left. Ha ha ha, it's under your feet. Han Yunshi laughed loudly. Duanmu Baye actually lowered his head. Seeing this, Han Yunshi laughed so hard that she almost fell down. There was nothing under Duanmu Baye's feet. Ah, he was actually tricked. Duanmu Baye's face alternated between white and red, and his hands clenched into fists. His Excellency Pill Fiend's eyes were dark and gloomy. He had personally planted Ghost Hits the Wall on the roof, and it looked no different from weeds. Not to mention pharmacists, even many top-notch poison masters who came here couldn't find it. Han Yunshi tricked Duanmu Baye because she probably couldn't find it, right? Thinking of this, Pill Fiend regained some confidence and quickly calmed down. He reminded her in a strange tone, Han Yunshi, you found 7 Deaths Hawktail and Shan by Yimi, but if you can't find Ghost Hits the Wall, you can't win. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Han Yunshi's eyes became meaningful. Seeing this, Pill Fiend panicked. However, this meaningful look quickly disappeared, and Han Yunshi inadvertently glanced at the roof. This inadvertent glance was far more meaningful than the previous one, and it made Pill Fiend's heart jump. Could it be that she even found Ghost Hits the Wall? Was she a genius? In order to find this Ghost Hits the Wall to plant, Pill Fiend had traversed mountains and ridges for 3 days and 3 nights. Seeing Pill Fiend's nervousness, Han Yunshi smiled indifferently and didn't say anything. However, Duanmu Baye saw her and Pill Fiend exchanging glances and immediately understood. Ghost Hits the Wall was also planted in this courtyard. How could it be like this? These were all very rare herbs, and Pill Fiend had just said that there was only one Ghost Hits the Wall. How could Yarrow, who had rushed out long ago, find it? Duanmu Baye couldn't care less about where the third herb was. Right now, he was most concerned about his little sister. Although he was a cruel and insidious person, he loved his little sister to the bone. He couldn't bear to see her suffer even the slightest grievance. Pill Fiend, you asked a good question. Duanmu Baye angrily turned and was about to leave, but Long Feiyi's figure flashed and blocked his path. He coldly said, the rules were just set. Bystanders can't help. Don't forget. Duanmu Baye was angry, but he had no reason to leave. Pill Fiend was present, so he didn't dare to act shamelessly. He could only sit on the side and sulk. This time, they were definitely going to lose. Pill Fiend wasn't in the mood to care about Duanmu Baye. At this time, his attention was all on Han Yunxi, and his gaze never left her. He really wanted to know whether Han Yunxi recognized ghost hits the wall. He was waiting for Han Yunxi to say it. And the helpless Duanmu Baye could only wait, waiting for Han Yunxi to reveal the answer and then find Yao Yao. However, Han Yunxi just sat there without saying anything, and her eyes didn't move. At this time, Duanmu Yao Yao was searching for the 7 Deaths iris all over the valley. She looked at the pictures and explanations on the herb atlas 3 or 4 times, and she thought that she was smart enough to find the foxtail bush first. Thus, she flew all over the valley, and whenever she saw a large patch of foxtail bush, she would land and carefully compare it with the herb atlas. How could she know everything that happened in Pill Fiend's courtyard? As she searched, she didn't forget to think about Han Yunxi. She thought that Han Yunxi would be courting death just by looking for the foxtail bush. After eliminating a large patch of foxtail bush, Duanmu Yao Yao tapped her feet lightly and continued to fly to the next area. Although the task was a little difficult, she was still very confident. Soon, the sky began to darken. It was already dark, but Han Yunxi still hadn't found ghost hits the wall. Of course, she never left the courtyard. Medicine Ghost Valley lit a lantern in the courtyard. Duanmu Baye paced back and forth at the entrance of the courtyard, his face pale and his heart burning with anxiety. However, he couldn't go out and warn her. Pill Fiend squatted on a flower bed at the side, occasionally glancing at the roof and occasionally glancing at Han Yunxi. He still waited patiently. Chapter 64. For the entire afternoon, Duanmu Baye had been urging Han Yunxi to hurry up and find the wall-hitting ghost. Now that things had reached a point of no return, he would rather lose early than let Yao Yao foolishly search outside. But Han Yunxi wasn't in a hurry. At this time, she was sitting at the stone table with Long Fei Yi, drinking tea and eating snacks. Long Fei Yi lifted his robe and sat casually, his entire body emitting a cold and domineering aura as if he was the master of this courtyard. Han Yunxi propped up her head with one hand and held a teacup with the other, looking especially relaxed. Regarding the wall-hitting ghost, she didn't say anything and Long Fei Yi also didn't ask anything. However, he had to admit that this woman once again gave him a surprise that could even be called a pleasant surprise. For no reason, he actually firmly believed that she would be able to find the wall-hitting ghost. Long Fei Yi inadvertently raised his eyes to look at Han Yunxi, his deep and cold eyes flashing with a hint of recognition that even he himself didn't notice. This was the first time he acknowledged a woman like this. How many more skills did this woman have that he didn't know about? Finally, the sky was completely dark, but Duanmu Yao still hadn't returned. Duanmu Baye couldn't bear it anymore and strode in front of Han Yunxi. Qin Wangfei, since you've already found the wall-hitting ghost, then show it to avoid wasting everyone's time. With Han Yunxi's relaxed appearance, only a ghost would believe that she hadn't found the wall-hitting ghost. If she dragged on like this, it was undoubtedly purposely tormenting Yao Yao. Lord Pill Fiend's eyes lit up and a trace of complexity flashed through his eyes. He hoped that Han Yunxi could find the wall-hitting ghost to amaze him, but at the same time, he didn't want the question that he had carefully set to be solved so easily. Of course, what he hated the most was that he couldn't make Long Fei Yi suffer. Han Yunxi raised her eyebrows and looked at Duanmu Baye, saying seriously, "Crown Prince thinks too highly of me. From what I know, the wall-hitting ghost is very strange. Only one can grow on a mountain, or else all of them will die. This valley is so big, and His Excellency Pill Fiend also said that there was only one medicinal herb. It really isn't easy to find. How could I find it so quickly?" Hearing Han Yunxi's words, His Excellency Pill Fiend's eyes revealed a look of appreciation. At this point, he couldn't help but admire this woman. She even knew about the ghost labyrinth's habits. It seemed that she was a very knowledgeable fellow. She was young and a woman at that. She wasn't simple at all. His Excellency Pill Fiend looked at Han Yunxi. As he looked, his eyes gradually narrowed, and admiration gradually replaced the original hostility. However, Han Yunqi's words were a form of mockery to Duanmu Baiye. His Excellency Pill Fiend had just said that there was only one wall-hitting ghost. Han Yunqi's emphasis was undoubtedly hinting to Duanmu Baiye that she was doing it on purpose. Wasn't Duanmu Yaro's speed very fast? She might as well take a few more laps outside. In any case, it was already dark and she didn't want to leave for the time being. Duanmu Baiye clenched his fist so tightly that it made cracking sounds. If it was Han Yunqi's man, he would definitely throw a punch at him. If Han Yunqi delayed in the courtyard for a day, Yaro Yaro would have to work hard for a day. If she delayed for a month, Yaro Yaro would have to work hard for a month, or even a year. Yaro Yaro was completely passive. How Duanmu Baiye hoped that Yaro Yaro would be enlightened and come back to the courtyard to search. Compared to searching all over the valley, searching in such a small courtyard was simply too easy. However, even he himself didn't believe that Yaro Yaro would be enlightened and come back. Firstly, Yaro Yaro wasn't that smart. Secondly, he knew that girl's temperament. If she didn't find a single medicinal herb, she wouldn't come back because of her face. Duanmu Baiye's heart was stifled with anger. He couldn't go down or up. The more he looked at Han Yunqi, the more his heart hurt. This crafty woman, what number one trash? What inability to recognize medicinal ingredients? It's all an act. Time passed little by little. His Excellency Pill Fiend sent for dinner. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi both ate, but Duanmu Baiye didn't have the slightest appetite. Yao Yao, Yao Yao. Come back for a bit. However, after an entire night, Duanmu Yaro still hadn't returned. According to the old steward's report, Princess Changle had been seen flying all over the valley with a torch. Hearing this, Han Yunqi laughed out loud in front of everyone, nearly causing Duanmu Baiye to vomit blood. With Long Fei Yi watching over Duanmu Baiye, Han Yunqi was very relieved. She went to sleep early in the guest room. It had to be said that she made it so that even His Excellency Pill Fiend couldn't sleep. He accompanied Long Fei Yi to watch over Duanmu Baiye. After the long journey, Han Yunqi slept especially deeply and soundly. The next day, when the sun was high in the sky, she lazily walked into the courtyard. Good morning. Han Yunqi was in a good mood and greeted everyone. Long Fei Yi raised his brows and glanced at her, not saying anything. His Excellency Pill Fiend muttered to himself, not knowing what to say. Duanmu Baiye narrowed his eyes and suddenly rushed in front of Han Yunqi. However, at almost the same time, Long Fei Yi also arrived in front of her, protecting her behind him. Cold eyes gazed at Duanmu Baiye, a trace of displeasure flashing through his sharp eyes. Although she knew that Long Fei Yi was protecting her for the sake of the lifeblood pill, Han Yunqi still felt a bit of warmth in her heart. At the very least, this proved that she was worthy of the protection of the number one king of the world. What exactly do you all want? Duanmu Baiye finally exploded. Although it was only one day and one night, his heart ached for his little sister. Yaro Yaro was a golden branch and jade leaf. Since childhood, she had been doted on by everyone. Even when she was training at her sect, she had never suffered such hardship. What's more, this was basically Han Yunqi's scheme. Han Yunqi was here to laugh at them. The longer this dragged on, the more humiliating it would be for them. This was the first time Duanmu Baiye had suffered in front of a woman. Such humiliation was unbearable. Crown Prince Yi, don't be impatient. I haven't found the third medicinal herb yet. If you can't wait, you can surrender. I won't stop you. Han Yunqi seriously suggested. As soon as these words came out, Duanmu Baiye suddenly raised his hand and angrily said, Han Yunqi, you. A trace of killing intent flashed through Long Fei Yi's eyes. He grabbed Duanmu Baiye's wrist and coldly said, Qin Wangfei, you can't afford to be fierce. Seeing Long Fei Yi's killing intent, Duanmu Baiye was shocked. He had known Long Fei Yi for so many years, but when had he ever seen Long Fei Yi so serious about a woman? Duke of Qin, don't tell me you really exchanged the lifeblood pill for this woman. Duanmu Baiye probed. Long Fei Yi fiercely pushed him away and pushed him to the side of the wall. He coldly replied, it has nothing to do with you. Either surrender or wait on the side. Duan Mubaye clenched his fists until they cracked, but he had no choice but to continue waiting. Soon, half a day passed. Han Yunxi basked in the sun while drinking tea. From time to time, she would look at Duan Mubaye with a smile that wasn't a smile, full of provocation. Duan Mubaye was already angry, so how could he withstand Han Yunxi's provocation? He had been proud his entire life, but this was the first time a woman had looked at him like this. How could he tolerate this? Finally, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He stood up and hatefully said, "Lord Pill Fiend, we surrender. Immediately call Yaro Yaro back." Surrender. Lord Pill Fiend dug his ears and loudly said, "What? What did Crown Prince Yi say?" This lord didn't hear it. When had Duan Mubaye, the bloodthirsty crown prince, ever been so sullen? When had he ever admitted defeat so easily? "We surrender. If you want the 7 stars caterpillar grass, then immediately call Yaro Yaro back." Duan Mubaye's anger overflowed to the heavens. His voice was so gloomy that it seemed to come from the underworld. A trace of disdain flashed through the depths of Pill Fiend's eyes. He immediately ordered, "Someone, go bring Princess Changle back." Duan Mubaye didn't even want to look at Han Yunxi. Lifting his robe, he sat to the side, his face dark. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She looked towards Long Fei Yi with a smile, not avoiding the taboo of angering Duan Mubaye. Natural and unrestrained, she loudly said, "Long Fei Yi, I won." Han Yunxi's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Her entire being radiated with a threatening radiance. This radiance caused Long Fei Yi's gaze to be fixed on her face, not moving away for a long time. Seeing that Long Fei Yi was expressionless and had no reaction, Han Yunxi raised 2 fingers and made a V sign. Her smile became even more brilliant. "Hey, we won." Long Fei Yi pulled at the corners of his mouth. It was unknown whether or not he was smiling. In short, it was very stiff. Han Yunxi really wanted to roll her eyes. Thinking about it, she decided to forget it. This large block of ice was born with facial paralysis. She was already used to it. Duan Mubaye was originally anxious. Hearing that Han Yunxi was so happy, he was unable to restrain his anger. Originally, he didn't want to look at her, but at this moment, he was fiercely glaring at her. If that gaze could kill, Han Yunxi would have been annihilated long ago. On the other hand, Pill Fiend faintly stared at Long Fei Yi. If it weren't for Han Yunxi's competition, he definitely wouldn't have allowed Long Fei Yi to take away the lifeblood pill so easily. Where had this fellow found such an extraordinary woman? If she could stay in Medicine Ghost Valley, it would be a good choice. Soon, Duan Muyaro was brought back. Her entire person was much dimmer. Her long hair was disheveled, and her originally spotless white dress was speckled with dirt. She probably hadn't slept for the entire night. Her eyes were bloodshot and revealed an unconcealable exhaustion. The person who brought her back didn't tell her what happened. As soon as she entered the courtyard, she saw that Han Yunxi was also there. Duan Muyaro immediately perked up and sneered, "What, Han Yunxi, are you going to admit defeat? Don't mention 3 herbs, this woman definitely couldn't find even one. If she didn't admit defeat, why did they bring her back?" Han Yunxi didn't say anything. She looked at her up and down with great interest. Duan Mubaye was distressed for his sister and angry. He pulled Duan Muyaro over and said unhappily, "Take out the 7 stars caterpillar grass." When these words came out, Duan Muyaro was stunned. "What? They won. Take it out." Duan Mubaye's expression darkened even more. Duan Muyaro was stunned again, then angrily said, "Impossible. How did they win? Where's the item?" Although she knew that her imperial brother wouldn't lie to her, she still couldn't believe it. This was too sudden. It was your imperial brother who admitted defeat to Lord Pill Fiend. If you don't believe me, you can ask Lord Pill Fiend. Han Yunxi smiled innocently. Duan Muyaro abruptly looked at Lord Pill Fiend. Seeing Lord Pill Fiend nod, she inconceivably retreated a few steps. She then grabbed Duan Mubaye's collar and angrily questioned, "Who told you to admit defeat? Who told you to admit defeat?" Duan Mubaye was a dignified crown prince, yet he didn't get angry when his sister grabbed his collar like this. Instead, he looked distressed for her and explained in a low voice. However, before Duanmu Yarrow could finish listening, she was already furious. Obtaining the lifeblood pill was one thing, but losing face was another. How could she lose to Han Yunshi? And in front of her senior brother? Where's the item? This princess wants to see it for herself. Duanmu Yarrow was extremely furious. She rushed in front of Han Yunshi, and even Duanmu Baye couldn't stop her. Han Yunshi was very willing to enlighten her. She pointed at the 7 deaths hawktails and Shan by Yimi in the courtyard for Duanmu Yarrow to see. Duanmu Yarrow was surprised. After a while, she came back to her senses and realized how stupid she had been. Chapter 65. Duanmu Yarrow finally realized that not only had she been humiliated, but she had also brought shame upon herself. Han Yunshi had not left the courtyard at all. She had even found the ghostly labyrinth. Duanmu Yarrow had been stalling for time, allowing Duanmu Yarrow to run all over the mountain like a clown. Han Yunshi, you. Duanmu Yarrow was both embarrassed and angry. Pointing at Han Yunshi, she was so angry that she was almost speechless. You cheated. You come from a medical family and are familiar with medicinal ingredients, but I know nothing about them. This is unfair. I refuse to accept this. Han Yunshi had long known that this princess had no credibility to speak of. Looking towards Pill Fiend, she said, Your Excellency, Pill Fiend, you must uphold justice. At this moment, Pill Fiend found Han Yunshi pleasing to the eye. Eccentrically, he warned, Hehe, Princess Changle, before the competition, it was you who said that the rules were fair. Now that you want to go back on your word, this Darin will be very unhappy. Duanmu Yarrow did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. She still wanted to argue, but Duanmu Baye pulled her back, firmly gripping her wrist. In a low voice, he said, Enough. This is not the place to make trouble. Although His Excellency Pill Fiend was eccentric, unpredictable, and even crazy, he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. After being humiliated once, Duanmu Baye didn't want to be known as someone who couldn't afford to lose a bet. He also didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Even her imperial brother was somewhat angry. Although Duanmu Yarrow was extremely unwilling, she still turned around and obediently took out the 7 stars caterpillar grass from her chest. As soon as she handed it over to her imperial brother, tears streamed out of her eyes. Glancing resentfully at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi, she angrily turned around and ran out. Han Yunshi, I hate you. Next time, I definitely won't let you off. Duanmu Baye handed the 7 stars caterpillar grass to Pill Fiend. Coldly, he said, Your Excellency, a bet is a bet. This one keeps his word. Pill Fiend revealed a bony hand, grabbing it into his black robes. Soon, he began to cackle strangely, no longer paying attention to Duanmu Baye. Duke of Qin, may we meet again someday. Duanmu Baye still had a bit of grace. He cupped his hands and bowed. Although he was talking to Long Fei Yi, he was warning Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi, you really are a strange girl, but it's a pity you hurt Yarrow and humiliated this prince. It's best if you don't fall into this prince's hands one day. After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Han Yunshi had seen even scarier warnings, so she wasn't afraid. She muttered, If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. How is this admitting defeat? After hiding the 7 stars caterpillar grass, His Excellency Pill Fiend laughed strangely. Qin Wangfei, this Darin admires you, sincerely. Han Yunshi immediately felt her hair stand on end. She subconsciously hid behind Long Fei Yi. She couldn't accept this strange thing's submission. Long Fei Yi handed over the poisonous python pill and reminded him coldly, His Excellency Pill Fiend, you should take out the lifeblood pills now. As soon as he saw Long Fei Yi, His Excellency Pill Fiend immediately put on an arrogant attitude and unhurriedly said, Just wait. As he spoke, he unhurriedly went into the room to get it. After a long time, he finally returned with a brocade box and slowly opened it. Inside the box was a blood-red medicinal pills the size of a pellet. Upon closer inspection, one could even faintly smell the scent of blood. This was the lifeblood pills that Jiyu Beiyu had mentioned. Han Yunqi's eyes immediately lit up. She reached out to take it, but who knew that His Excellency Pill Fiend would hurriedly take it back and laugh mischievously. Qin Wangfei, if you tell me where the wall-hitting ghost is in this courtyard, this thing will belong to you. How about it? Han Yunqi was stunned. Just as she was about to speak, Long Feiyi coldly said, Jiu Qi Sho, are you going to go back on your word? This Daren isn't talking to you. His Excellency Pill Fiend's cold voice changed faster than flipping a book. However, Han Yunqi said, what if I'm not willing to tell you? His Excellency Pill Fiend's eyes darkened. His killing intent suddenly appeared, but it was quickly concealed. He took a deep breath and handed over the lifeblood pills with both hands. Han Yunqi was afraid that he would regret it, so she hurriedly put away the pouch for safekeeping. Then, she took a deep breath. The most important thing was finally in her hands. Long Tianmo's illness could be considered to have mostly recovered. Now that they had the item, they naturally had to hurry back. Everyone in the Eastern Palace was probably anxious. Unexpectedly, His Excellency Pill Fiend actually followed them all the way to the door. He chuckled mischievously and pestered them. Qin Wangfei, just tell me. You really found it, right? Han Yunqi smiled mysteriously. Hehe, I'll tell you when I come back next time. His Excellency Pill Fiend still wanted to pester her, but Long Feiyi turned around and gave him a cold glance. His Excellency Pill Fiend only felt the killing intent around him suddenly rise. His narrow eyes narrowed with a dangerous glint as he provoked him back. However, when Han Yunqi and Long Feiyi walked out of the valley, His Excellency Pill Fiend didn't pester them anymore. Instead, he watched them from afar. Only when he saw their figures disappear did His Excellency Pill Fiend chuckle. Unexpectedly, not only was this voice extremely magnetic, it was also deep and pleasant to the ears. It was clearly the voice of a young man. His hands stretched out from his black robe. They were gentle like white jade and slender and good-looking. They were completely different from their previous emaciated appearance. Even the precious poisonous python pill and 7 stars caterpillar grass lying in his palms weren't as eye-catching as his hands. He muttered to himself with a mischievous smile, Han Yunqi. Hehe, interesting. We'll meet again someday. On the way back, Long Feiyi asked Han Yunqi, where's the wall-hitting ghost in the courtyard? She didn't expect this fellow to be curious as well. Han Yunqi said mysteriously, I'm not telling you. His expression stiffened, a little surprised by Han Yunqi's reaction. But he quickly recovered his usual cold demeanor. The two of them hurried on their way and arrived at Tianning's capital 3 days later in the morning. Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi's absence had left the Emperor and Empress worried sick. If the Duke of Qin hadn't taken them away, everyone would have assumed that Han Yunqi had run away. It was still early in the morning, but the Eastern Palace was already packed with people. Emperor Tianhui came over as soon as he finished court, while the Empress Dowager and Empress stayed close to him. Even Han Konggan didn't leave, but respectfully waited behind the Empress Dowager. He didn't dare to voice his grievances. Jiu Beiyu was inside the room, keeping watch by the Crown Prince's bedside. Your Majesty, the Duke of Qin and Qin Wangfei have entered the palace and are heading this way. Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi had just entered the palace when eunuch Shui scrambled over to report. Emperor Tianhui was thrilled. Did you bring back the lifeblood pill? Hearing this, Han Konggan grew nervous and stared fixedly at eunuch Shui, waiting for his reply. Han Yunqi had already analyzed the illness so thoroughly and insisted that her diagnosis wasn't wrong. Although Han Konggan had been forced into silence, he still refused to believe Han Yunqi's diagnosis. As long as they got the lifeblood pill, Han Yunqi could start treatment. Then they'd know whether he or Han Yunqi was right. The Crown Prince's stomach was a child, so he wanted to see how Han Yunqi would turn the child into a malignant tumor. Eunuch Shui was in a difficult position. Your servant forgot to ask. Actually, Eunuch Shui didn't dare to ask. What right did he have to ask His Highness Duke of Qin? Even if he did, His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't spare him a glance. Useless thing, hurry up and go, the Empress Dowager scolded. She was even more anxious than Emperor Tianhui. Yes. Your servant will go right away. Eunuch Shui was about to leave when Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi entered the courtyard. The two of them were travel-worn from the journey, but still looked as elegant as ever. Long Fei Yi, especially, entered the courtyard. His tall and proud figure immediately gave everyone a sense of pressure. Only the emperor's aura could rival his. Emperor Tianhui might be impatient, but he wasn't flustered. As soon as he saw Long Fei Yi enter, he stepped forward and asked with concern, "Duke of Qin, did your journey go smoothly?" Thanks to Imperial Brother's good fortune, everything went smoothly. Long Fei Yi bowed with his hands clasped in front. Han Yunxi followed suit and bowed by his side. "Hehe, then that's good, that's good. You may all rise," Emperor Tianhui said with a smile. Emperor Tianhui smiled. He didn't look anxious, but the people around him were burning with impatience. All of them were staring at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, waiting for news. Then, "Did you bring back the lifeblood pill?" Emperor Tianhui finally asked about business. Everyone grew nervous at these words, especially Han Konggan, who knitted his brows. Inside the room, Jiyu Beiyu and Crown Prince Long Tianmo both stopped moving to listen in silence. Long Fei Yi was expressionless. He wasn't anxious like the rest, because the item wasn't in his hands. Han Yunxi swept her eyes over the crowd, secretly delighted. "Making you all wait is worth this Wang Fei's hard work." Her gaze swept past Han Konggan, who immediately grew alarmed. "What does this damned lass mean by this?" Han Yunxi had only delayed for a few seconds, but impatient people couldn't wait. "Duke of Qin, did you all get the lifeblood pill?" the Empress couldn't help but ask. Long Fei Yi didn't speak, but glanced towards Han Yunxi. His eyes were telling her to stop before going too far. "All right," Han Yunxi smiled and immediately took out a brocade box from her sleeve. "This is the lifeblood pill. We got it without a hitch." In a flash, everyone's eyes focused on them. Emperor Tianhui didn't dare to be careless, but quickly called out, "Imperial Physician Jiyu, Imperial Physician Jiyu, come over here." Jiyu Beiyu came out of the room and walked over with quick steps. "Imperial Physician Jiyu, this is the lifeblood pill?" Emperor Tianhui asked seriously. As soon as he smelled the scent of blood and saw the color, Jiyu Beiyu was certain. "Delighted," he said, "to reply Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, and esteemed Empress, this really is the lifeblood pill. The Crown Prince's illness can be cured. Congratulations to Your Majesty, congratulations to Your Majesty." With Jiyu Beiyu's confirmation, everyone felt relieved. But with the lifeblood pill in hand, it meant that Han Yunxi's treatment was about to begin. Actually, Emperor Tianhui and the Empress Dowager didn't completely trust Han Yunxi's diagnosis, but they were more willing to believe in Han Yunxi than Han Konggan's diagnosis. Of course, this was also Emperor Tianhui's last chance for the Crown Prince. If the Crown Prince was cured, then everything would be fine. If not, then Emperor Tianhui would have to give up on the Crown Prince. The Empress was the clearest about this complicated relationship. To Emperor Tianhui, he had many sons, but to the Empress, she only had the Crown Prince as her only son. She didn't care whether Han Yunxi's diagnosis was right or wrong, or whether the Crown Prince's stomach was filled with a malignant tumor or a child. She only wanted one result, and that was the Crown Prince was fine. "Han Yunxi, then can we detoxify the poison now?" Emperor Tianhui's eyes revealed traces of nervousness. But Han Yunxi only said, "No." "What?" She already had the lifeblood pill, but it still wasn't enough. Everyone fell silent at her words. Even Long Fei Yi knitted his brows and looked over. Chapter 66. Why couldn't Han Yunxi start expelling the poison even though she'd gotten her hands on the lifeblood pill? Everyone was astonished, but Han Yunxi explained, "I'm too tired. Let's start in the afternoon to avoid any mistakes." Han Yunxi was exhausted from rushing all the way here. Everyone else was anxious, but she wasn't. She had to take care of her own body. As a doctor, being responsible for herself meant being responsible for the patient. Although she'd gotten her hands on the lifeblood pill, expelling the poison was only a minor operation, it was still an incision. If there was a single mistake during the process, the consequences would be hard to explain. Hearing her words, Emperor Tianhui's eyes flashed with displeasure. Still, he dreaded the words to avoid any mistakes, so he didn't say much, but nodded in agreement. Han Yunxi slept the entire morning in a side room of the Eastern Palace. Besides Long Fei Yi, no one else left. Although they were all impatient, they could only wait for her all morning. After waking up in the afternoon and eating some snacks, Han Yunxi finally returned to the courtyard. Jiyu Beiyu had already made some preparations and was waiting for her. When she didn't see Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi's eyes flashed with astonishment, but she didn't think too much about it. Han Yunxi, you're awake now, aren't you? Emperor Tianhui asked loftily. To reply, Your Majesty, Yunxi is much more awake. Han Yunxi bowed as she replied truthfully. That's good. You should know that if anything goes wrong. Emperor Tianhui didn't finish his sentence, but it was more intimidating than a warning. Yunxi understands. Han Yunxi lowered her head, her eyes deep and calm. Since Emperor Tianhui had spoken, she naturally had to make her own demands. Your Majesty, when Chunxie is treating, no one is allowed to be present besides Imperial Physician Ji Yu. At these words, the Empress was the first to feel uneasy. She said coldly, Han Yunxi, what kind of attitude is this? On one side, Han Konggan seized the chance to question her. Qin Wangfei, could it be that there's some secret plot behind your treatment that needs to be cleared out? Or perhaps, the Crown Prince's stomach is already a fetus, and you're afraid that others will see it? Han Yunxi coldly glanced at him and said sarcastically, why don't you treat him, Divine Dr. Han? You. Han Konggan had no words to reply, but turned to Emperor Tianhui instead. Your Majesty, as this commoner sees it, there must be something fishy going on here. Jiyu Beiyu knew Han Yunxi's habits and was about to explain when Han Yunxi spoke to Emperor Tianhui. Your Majesty, this treatment is extremely taxing on the mind. You're all under too much pressure in Yunxi's presence, so you can't concentrate. In order to reduce the risk of treatment and for the sake of the Crown Prince's safety, I ask the Emperor to understand. As for Divine Dr. Han's suspicions, Yunxi said long ago that once the poison in the Crown Prince's stomach is cured, Divine Dr. Han can personally examine him. As soon as Han Yunxi entered the zone, her solemn and professional side was revealed. Although her voice wasn't loud, it carried a sense of authority that couldn't be ignored. Without waiting for Emperor Tianhui to reply, Han Yunxi added, aside from this, Yunxi has another request. During Yunxi's treatment, I hope that you can ensure that the surroundings are quiet and safe, so as to eliminate unnecessary disturbances and accidents. Everyone present was the most respected figure in the empire, but right now, the doctor held the highest authority. Although Han Yunxi's attitude made Emperor Tianhui very uncomfortable, he could only agree to her demands at this juncture. Leaving aside the issue of responsibility, Emperor Tianhui didn't want to see any mistakes. After the treatment, he'd have people inspect the scene immediately. Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to play any tricks. All right, Jin agrees. I hope you won't disappoint Jin either. Go on in, Emperor Tianhui said coldly. Since Emperor Tianhui had agreed, what else could Han Konggan say? He glared hatefully at Han Yunxi, anticipating the examination after the treatment. Many thanks for your Majesty's understanding. Yunxi won't disappoint you. Han Yunxi was still very confident. After all, once the problem of excessive blood loss was solved, the treatment would be simple. Only then did she rise and prepare to enter the rooms with Jiyu Beiyu. At this moment, the Empress chased after them and took her hand. Yunxi, I'll leave Tianmo to you. Han Yunxi was about to speak when the Empress lowered her voice and warned her cold. Han Yunxi, you better make sure that Tianmo is safe and sound. Otherwise, I definitely won't let you off. As the Empress spoke, her lips rose into an arrogant smile. Of course, if you cure Tianmo, I and the Empress Dowager won't treat you unfairly. Han Yunxi laughed coldly in her heart. Wasn't this trouble caused by the Empress? She didn't want to be treated unfairly. As long as the Empress didn't cause her any more trouble, she'd be thankful. Han Yunxi didn't reply, but gave the Empress a deep look. Without a trace, she pushed aside her hand and immediately entered the room, personally closing the door behind her. Seeing this, the Empress was so angry that her face turned black. What a Han Yunxi! If you weren't the Duke of Qin's official consort, I could crush you to death with a single finger. You better be so confident when you come out later. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson." Once the door closed, the Empress Dowager and Empress didn't leave. They stood outside the door and eavesdropped, hoping to hear something. The Empress was angry, but more than that, she was nervous. The Emperor didn't go far, but sat down in the courtyard. Seeing the Empress Dowager and Empress sneaking around in front of the door, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. "Muhu, come and sit," he said mildly. Only then did the Empress Dowager come over, her eyes full of worry. Ija's heart, it's up and down. It's uneasy." The Empress was about to agree when she saw the impatience in the Emperor's eyes. She could only give up and accompany the Empress Dowager to sit on the side. Waiting for even a second longer felt like an eternity. Inside the room, the busy Han Yunxi had long forgotten the time. She had already done the necessary checks on Long Tianmo. After confirming that she could use the scalpel, she immediately anesthetized him with medicine. This anesthesia had to be a full-body anesthesia. First, it would be very uncomfortable to take the poison later. Second, if she used the scalpel, Long Tianmo might not be able to endure it. Of course, the most important thing was that she didn't want Long Tianmo to see too much. The new anesthetic in her detoxification system was very useful. After a while, Long Tianmo completely fainted. Jiyu Beiyu then began to decoct the medicine. The large bag of poison was turned into a small bowl of poison soup. It was indeed poison. The taste was especially strange. Even Jiyu Beiyu, who grew up in piles of medicine, couldn't stand it. Fortunately, Long Tianmo was unconscious. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for him to drink the medicine. After decocting the medicine, Jiyu Beiyu personally forced Long Tianmo to drink it. Han Yunxi walked to the medicine pot. Just as she was about to dispose of the poison dregs, she suddenly stopped and hesitated. The smell of the dregs was stronger than she expected. Whether it was hidden in her medical bag or Jiyu Beiyu's case, it could be smelled out. If it was found, it would be difficult to explain. What should I do? Han Yunxi looked back at Jiyu Beiyu. Seeing that his attention was on Long Tianmo, her eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. She moved her back to Jiyu Beiyu to block his view. However, Han Yunxi didn't know that at this moment, a pair of cold and deep eyes were staring at her from the roof. Long Fei Yi saw Han Yunxi's strange behavior at a glance and immediately suspected that there was a problem with the medicine pot. However, as a non-professional, he couldn't understand what was going on. Could it be that Han Yunxi was hiding something from Jiyu Beiyu? At this moment, Han Yunxi's hand was lightly grasping the dregs of medicine. She seemed to be smelling them, but in the split second that Long Fei Yi was distracted, the dregs of medicine in Han Yunxi's hand vanished into thin air. Long Fei Yi suddenly frowned and immediately moved a tile to let himself see more clearly. He saw that the dregs in the medicine pot were already empty. Han Yunxi turned around to open Jiyu Beiyu's case and took out a bag of medicine. Where was it? Did he see wrongly, or did it really disappear into thin air? Long Fei Yi couldn't figure it out. The safest way was to store the dregs of poison in the detox system. They couldn't even be smelled. Han Yunxi glanced at Jiyu Beiyu and saw that he was still pouring Long Tianmo's poison down his throat. She exhaled and relaxed. She took out the ingredients she'd prepared beforehand from Jiyu Beiyu's case. These were the ingredients she'd written down on a whim before. She placed the entire bag of ingredients into the medicine pot and only added half of the water to boil them all over again. By the time she was done expelling the poison, these dregs would have turned to dregs. She wasn't afraid of Emperor Tianhui or Han Konggan inspecting them then. After pouring down the bowl of poison, Han Yunxi's gaze turned serious. Although this was a simple operation, there were always risks involved. This was the most crucial step, but also the most dangerous. The poison began to dissolve the fetus in Long Tianmo's womb. Rather than calling it a fetus, Han Yunxi preferred to call it a thing, because that thing only had signs of life. Perhaps it didn't even have the shape of a human. Thinking this way, she felt less guilty about facing life. Han Yunxi calmly lifted Long Tianmo's robes to reveal his big belly. Although he knew Han Yunxi was a doctor now, Jiyu Beiyu was still speechless at her nimble movements. Still, he admired her even more. This woman wasn't as bashful as other women. Her actions were impudent, but her heart was magnanimous. She did things decisively and boldly. Imperial Physician Jiyu, you're not allowed to speak to me before I start the operation. No matter what happens, don't disturb me. Han Yunxi's tone was very serious. It took time for the poison to dissolve that thing, and the length of time would determine when Han Yunxi would start the operation. If it was too early, there'd be no way to completely dissolve the fetus in the womb. If it was too late, the poison might start to endanger the 5 viscera and 6 bowels and create new problems, or leave behind sequelae. Han Yunxi wouldn't allow any of this, nor could she afford to take responsibility for it. After all, the 3 people outside weren't people to be trifled with. There was still Han Konggan waiting to grab hold of her pigtails. She could only succeed at this step, not fail. Although Jiyu Beiyu didn't understand the intricacies of this step, he knew it was crucial. Otherwise, Han Yunxi wouldn't have asked Emperor Tianhui for a second request. All right, don't be too nervous, Jiyu Beiyu said as he turned to leave, trying his best to minimize any disturbances. Han Yunxi's gaze rested on Long Tianmo's bulging stomach, her gaze solemn and focused. She immediately activated the detox system's deep scanning function to scan the poison in Long Tianmo's abdomen. She tracked the movement of the poison and calculated the progress of its dissolution based on the changes in the poison's toxicity. At this moment, Han Yunxi was completely focused, her entire being emanating a solemn aura that didn't allow anyone to disturb her or approach her. Although the detox system's deep scanning function was calculated by AI, it still required the cooperation of her consciousness. Her concentration had to reach 100%, or else it'd affect the system's calculations and affect the time it took to start the operation. Jiyu Beiyu watched her from a distance, his eyes filled with amazement. He liked this woman's serious looks the most. But right at this moment, Chapter 67. Just as Han Yunxi was concentrating, Han Konggan's voice suddenly came from outside the door. He was pleading with Emperor Tianhui, and his voice wasn't soft. Damn it. Jiyu Beiyu silently cursed, but didn't dare to open the door to stop him. He was afraid that the people outside would rush inside and affect Han Yunxi even more. Outside the room, Han Konggan had been looking forward to the post-treatment examination, but the more he thought about it, the more unsettled he felt. He couldn't just sit and wait for death. What if Han Yunxi really bribed Jiyu Beiyu to play some sort of trick? Then wouldn't he be finished? No matter what, he wouldn't allow it even if there was the slightest possibility. He had to go inside and watch Han Yunxi's every move with his own eyes. Your Majesty, let this commoner go in and take a look as well. After all, this commoner has served His Highness Crown Prince for so many years. I understand his body's condition better than Imperial Physician Jiyu. Emperor Tianhui looked at him coldly, hesitating. Your Majesty, let this commoner go in. For better or for worse, I'll be able to take care of him and see clearly how Qin Wangfei treats him. That way, it'll be safer than a post-treatment examination, won't it? Han Konggan's words were clear enough. Emperor Tianhui was still suspicious of Han Yunxi, but he nodded at these words. You can go in. Han Konggan rejoiced. Thank you, Your Majesty. This commoner will definitely see clearly. Delighted, Han Konggan's voice grew louder. Jiyu Beiyu heard him clearly, but Han Yunxi didn't move at all. It wasn't clear whether she heard him or not. Seeing Han Konggan walk over, Jiyu Beiyu's heart burned with impatience. He was stuck in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. If he let Han Konggan knock on the door, he could refuse. Or he could go out and stop him. Both options would greatly affect Han Yunxi. Jiyu Beiyu's usually calm brows furrowed tightly. At this time, Han Yunxi also heard the commotion outside, but her ability to resist interference was not bad, so she directly ignored it. However, no one could guarantee that when Han Konggan knocked on the door later, Han Yunxi would still be able to control her attention. At the critical moment, Han Konggan was already at the door. Jiyu Beiyu decided to throw caution to the wind. He pressed one hand on the door and prepared to open it. Han Yunxi seemed to notice his action and instantly became distracted. She immediately tried her best to regain her senses. Beads of sweat the size of beans appeared on her forehead, and her back was already drenched. However, he couldn't concentrate. If this continued, he would make a mistake, and it would be a big mistake. What to do? Unexpectedly, at this critical moment, a cold voice rang out. "Your Majesty, didn't you just promise her that no one will disturb her?" This voice belonged to Qin Wang. The Duke of Qin was the Duke of Qin. Han Konggan abruptly stopped at his words. Hearing this, Jiyu Beiyue's heart finally settled back into his chest. His hand on the door dropped as well, while Han Yunxi exhaled in relief. Just like when she'd saved the young general, her hand had trembled as she held the needle. But as soon as she heard his voice, her heart calmed down and she felt like the entire world was safe. She narrowed her eyes and immediately entered a state of mind, forgetting everything around her. It wasn't clear what Long Fei had done outside, but even Jiyu Beiyu didn't hear a sound from the door after his words. Outside, Han Konggan's mouth was gagged. Long Fei was sitting on the steps by the door. Although he sat very low, his entire body emanated an air of nobility that was hard to ignore. His every movement carried an air of confidence and ease. Emperor Tianhui didn't say much because of the promise, but a complicated look flitted past his eyes. He'd been trying to figure out Long Fei's attitude towards this official consort all this time. He was someone who didn't care about matters that didn't concern him. Was this for the sake of the crown prince's safety, or to prevent Han Yunxi from committing a crime? Inside the room, it was still silent. Time slowed as they waited. Gradually, they heard the rumbling sounds of Long Tianmo's stomach, the sound of the poison dissolving the fetus in the womb's bones. This voice grew louder and louder. Then, it gradually became softer and softer until it gradually disappeared. As the voice disappeared, the atmosphere in the room also became extremely tense. Suddenly, Han Yunxi's eyes lit up as she said in a low voice, "Prepare the lifeblood pill." Success. Jiyu Beiyu broke into a smile and immediately prepared the lifeblood pill to coordinate with Han Yunxi to give Long Tianmo. Han Yunxi waited a bit longer until she heard the beep of the scanning system. Her taut nerves immediately relaxed. Time was up. After warming up her hands, Han Yunxi immediately began to use the knife. Her movements were practiced, nimble, and very beautiful. The sharp edge of the knife left a toucan gash on Long Tianmo's stomach. At first, bright red blood flowed out, but as Han Yunxi began to insert needles, the blood turned black. Han Yunxi searched for acupoints while observing the amount of blood. Soon enough, the entire bed was dyed red. Her head was bowed the entire time, her expression focused and professional. Although this was her best skill, she never let her guard down. Imperial physician Ji Yu used the medicine. Jiyu Beiyu cooperated very well. The lifeblood pill was truly a miraculous item. Long Tianmo's deathly pale complexion gradually turned rosy. Han Yunxi raised her eyes to look at him before taking his pulse. Satisfied, she continued to search for acupoints. Although the process was very long, the danger had been reduced to its lowest point. Finally, half an hour later, all the toxins in Long Tianmo's body had been completely removed. There was no need for any follow-up medicine. Han Yunxi used some anti-inflammatory and raw flesh adhesives before carefully bandaging the gash. Finally, she carefully tidied up Long Tianmo's clothes. Finally, it was all done. Han Yunxi turned her head and exhaled a long breath of turbid air. Her mind relaxed, but what followed was exhaustion. The tiredness accumulated over the past few days, as well as the exhaustion caused by the 2 hours earlier, all exploded. However, she still persevered. She took his pulse and checked his complexion. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she sat down at the side and said indifferently, "Imperial physician Ji Yu, open the door." Jiyu Beiyue's eyes held a trace of heartache, but he didn't open the door immediately. Instead, he poured a cup of warm water for Han Yunxi to drink, then took out a few pieces of ginseng from his case and said softly, "Put them in your mouth. Rest a bit first, there's no rush." Han Yunxi took the ginseng and put it in her mouth. She knew that it was worth a fortune. If it wasn't 1,000 years old, it was at least 500 years old. A small piece was worth 1,000 gold, but he'd given her 3 large pieces at once. Perhaps she was hallucinating from her exhaustion, but when she looked at Jiyu Beiyu, she only felt that he was surrounded by a faint golden aura that made him seem like a gentle angel. Seeing that Han Yunxi's face was better, Jiyu Beiyu went to open the door. Emperor Tianhui and the rest were all waiting anxiously in the courtyard. As soon as the door opened, the Empress was the first to rush over. "How is the Crown Prince?" Jiyu Beiyu smiled as he replied, "Congratulations to your Majesty, Empress Dowager, and esteemed Empress. The treatment was very successful. His Highness Crown Prince is fine now." "Really?" Emperor Tianhui shot up from his seat, nearly losing his balance and falling down. The movement completely exposed his nervousness. The Empress Dowager stood up as well, overjoyed at the turn of events. "Really? Really?" The treatment went very smoothly. The malignant tumor in His Highness's abdomen has already been dissolved. All of the poison has been expelled. Jiyu Beiyu replied honestly. Quick, go in and take a look." The Empress was so happy that she was the first to walk inside. Seeing her so anxious, Jiyu Beiyu quickly coaxed her. "Esteemed Empress, slow down. Be careful not to fall." "I can't slow down. It's been so many years. I've dreamed of this day even in my dreams. I just knew that Tianmo would be fine. Emperor, I already said that Han Konggan must have misdiagnosed him. How could Tianmo have contracted such a strange illness?" The Empress Dowager said in pleasant surprise. The 2 women were so happy that they forgot their status. They spoke as they rushed inside. Emperor Tianhui couldn't care less as he strode into the room. Only Han Konggan was left gaping as he fell to the ground. Perhaps he was too shocked, but his mouth hung open so wide that the rag he'd used to gag it fell out of his mouth. The only one who remained calm was Long Fei Yi. He glanced at Jiyu Beiyu, who was still standing by the door, before turning to leave. Inside the room, the pungent smell of blood permeated the air. It smelled like rotten sewage. Han Yunxi's things were more or less cleaned up, leaving behind only the medicine pot and the blood-stained bedsheets. Long Tianmo lay quietly on the bed. His swollen abdomen had mostly disappeared, leaving behind only a ring of flab due to his loose skin. It couldn't be seen with the white gauze wrapped around it. It had to be said that the smell of blood in the room was very unpleasant, but everyone was so happy that they couldn't care less about it. She was his mother, after all, so the Empress ignored the blood-stained bed and sat down on it. She touched her son's face and was so moved that she was choked with sobs. "Is he really cured? Really?" The Empress Dowager stared at his stomach in disbelief. Good. That's too good." It was Emperor Tianhui who took care of his status and remained calm. "Han Yunxi, does this count as the Crown Prince recovering?" "To reply, Your Majesty, it's as Imperial Physician Jiyu said. The poison tumor in the Crown Prince's stomach has already been removed and expelled. Once the anesthetic wears off, the Crown Prince will wake up. I left behind 3 types of medicine that he can change every night. His wounds should be completely healed," Han Yunxi replied seriously. "Then how long will it take for him to wake up?" Emperor Tianhui asked next. Now the Empress Dowager and Empress were both looking over from their joy. Han Yunxi naturally knew what Emperor Tianhui meant. She couldn't leave until the Crown Prince woke up. "About 2 hours, she replied honestly. "Qin Wangfei, you should stay in the side chamber and rest first to avoid any more trouble," Emperor Tianhui said mildly. He wasn't asking for Han Yunxi's opinion, but ordering her around. Still, he didn't call her by her full name. The fact that he called her Qin Wangfei showed that his attitude towards her had changed. Han Yunxi really wanted to rest. She gave Jiyu Beiyu a meaningful look and was about to leave with the court lady when Han Konggan's voice carried in from outside. "Qin Wangfei, hold on." Soon enough, Han Konggan entered the room, his goatee slightly raised. His face was solemn as he bowed with hands clasped in front. "Your Majesty, as this commoner sees it, it's still too early to make a conclusion about His Highness Crown Prince's illness. Actually, His Highness Crown Prince's stomach was already gone. As long as he could wake up, There was no need to find out what was in his stomach now. Even if it really was a child, Emperor Tianhui would never allow news of it to spread. However, for Han Konggan, the appraisal was necessary. It was related to his reputation and even more so, his life. Of course, Emperor Tianhui wanted to know the truth without any outsiders around. Emperor Tianhui waved a hand, indicating for the court lady to withdraw first. Chapter 68. Although Han Konggan was eager to try, Emperor Tianhui didn't allow him to examine immediately. Instead, he asked, Imperial Physician Jiyu, have you examined the blood? Is there really poison in it? Jiyu Beiyu was a gentle fox. He was very modest. Your Majesty, you know that this official isn't an expert in poisons. How about we let Divine Dr. Han take a look? As he spoke, he added, of course, just to be on the safe side, we can invite a professional poison doctor to examine the blood as well. Han Konggan firmly believed in his diagnosis and was still full of confidence. Imperial Physician Jiyu is right. We really should invite a professional poison doctor to examine the blood. So speaking, he looked towards Han Yunxi. Qin Wangfei, don't you think so? Han Yunxi nodded, a mocking smile on her lips. She didn't bat an eyelid. Someone come, find 3 poison doctors, immediately, Emperor Tianhui ordered coldly. The Empress Dowager and Empress understood the situation as well. They exchanged glances without speaking. Actually, if this blood wasn't poison but the blood of a fetus, then Han Yunxi and Han Konggan wouldn't have an easy time no matter who was right or wrong. After all, would the Crown Prince still need a doctor when he'd already recovered? Han Konggan might be a famous doctor, but he was still a commoner. Han Yunxi might be Qin Wangfei, but that was only an empty title. Han Konggan had been so anxious to prove his diagnosis that he'd forgotten the most important point. Soon enough, the 3 poison doctors entered. Emperor Tianhui ordered them to examine the blood on the bed at the same time before reporting the results. Everyone in the room had their own thoughts as they watched the 3 poison doctors take the blood for examination. Han Konggan's gaze swept over Han Yunxi's medical pouch and Imperial Physician Gu's case, a look of understanding on his face as if he'd really discovered something. Han Yunxi seemed exhausted as she silently sat down on one side. All right, tired as she was still looking forward to the results. Soon enough, the 3 poison doctors came to a conclusion. To reply, Your Majesty, the blood really is poisonous. It's not a small poison either, but a highly toxic one. But this official is ignorant and doesn't know what kind of poison caused it, the poison doctor reported. As soon as he said this, Han Konggan, who was full of confidence, was shocked. He said angrily, impossible. Emperor Tianhui gave him a cold look before Han Konggan calmed down. Suppressing his shock and anger, he said respectfully, Your Majesty, even if the blood is poisonous, there's no way to ascertain whether it was poisoned when it was in His Highness's stomach or after it flowed out. Divine Dr. Han, what do you mean by that? Jiyu Beiyu, who had always been calm, asked coldly. Of course, Han Konggan suspected Jiyu Beiyu, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Your Majesty, without sufficient evidence, it's impossible to convince others, let alone determine the truth. Han Konggan reminded. If you want to poison him, then you must have an antidote. Jiyu Beiyu said. Emperor Tianhui trusted Jiyu Beiyu more or less, so he nodded his head. His gaze rested on the nearby pot of decocting medicine. Jiyu Beiyu was very indifferent. Your Majesty, that medicine was brewed by this humble subject, it's not poisonous. But since the poison doctor's here, there's no harm in examining it again. Han Yunxi had long taken care of these things, so how could they give themselves away? Emperor Tianhui was very cautious as he nodded his head. The poison doctor went to examine it again. Soon enough, he came to a conclusion. Your Majesty, these are medicinal ingredients that aren't poisonous. There's a wide variety of them, but this official isn't familiar with common medicinal ingredients, so I can't determine the specific ingredients. Hearing this, Han Konggan's face turned 3 shades paler, while Emperor Tianhui more or less had an idea of what was going on. Han Konggan, you're proficient in medicinal ingredients. Why don't you take a look at what kind of ingredients they are? Emperor Tianhui said, his tone cold. Han Konggan refused to believe it. He wanted to ferret out Han Yunxi's little tale. Yes. Thus, Han Konggan poured out all the ingredients from the pot and analyzed them one by one. He wrote down all the ingredients he found and turned them into a prescription. Han Yunxi watched him coldly from beginning to end. She really didn't know why her mother had married a man like this in the first place. How did she take a liking to him? After a long while, Han Konggan finally finished analyzing all the dregs of the ingredients and turned them into a complete prescription. As long as this prescription was different from the previous one, it was enough to prove that Han Yunxi had tampered with it. The prescription was handed over to Emperor Tianhui at the same time Jiyu Beiyu took out the original one for Emperor Tianhui to compare. For a moment, silence filled the room as everyone waited anxiously for the results. It wasn't clear whether he was affected by the atmosphere, but Han Konggan grew nervous as well. His hands were clasped behind his back, his fingers intertwined. Finally, Emperor Tianhui raised his head to look at Han Konggan. For a moment, everyone's hearts skipped a beat. What was the result of the comparison? Slap. Suddenly, Emperor Tianhui slammed the table and threw the two prescriptions at Han Konggan's face. What a divine Dr. Han! Take a look for yourself, he cried angrily. Han Konggan's face turned white as he picked up the prescription to compare. He discovered that the two prescriptions were actually identical. Heavens, how could this be? No. Han Konggan shook his head. Your Majesty, it can't be. It must have been Han Yunxi who poisoned the child. There has to be dregs of the poison left behind. She must have hidden them. Luckily, he'd guessed correctly. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Han Konggan, what nonsense are you spouting? The Empress on one side finally lost her temper. The truth was right before their eyes. There was no child in the Crown Prince's stomach. It was a malignant tumor, but Han Konggan still dared to slander the Crown Prince. Esteemed Empress, Han Yunxi must have used poison. There has to be dregs of the poison left behind. You have to believe me. Han Konggan was on the verge of collapse. He suddenly rushed towards Jiyu Beiyu's clinic and opened it up to search frantically. But there wasn't even any poison left, much less dregs. Seeing this, Han Yunxi generously tossed her own medical pouch over. Divine Dr. Han, take a look at mine as well. Han Konggan took it and rummaged through it until he poured out everything from Han Yunxi's pouch. In a flash, all sorts of acupuncture needles and white gauze littered the ground. Aside from that, there wasn't even any medicine. Now it wasn't just Han Konggan. Emperor Tianhui, the Empress Dowager, and the Empress were all convinced that Han Yunxi was right. They all believed that the Crown Prince's stomach was a malignant tumor. Han Konggan's hands turned to jelly as he let go of Han Yunxi's medical pouch. His mind buzzed as if something had hit it hard in the head, causing him to feel dizzy. His legs turned to jelly as well. It's impossible. How could it be? There really wasn't any poison. Han Yunxi's diagnosis was right, but he couldn't have made a mistake. That was a child. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. I don't believe it. As Han Konggan spoke, his legs turned to jelly as he fell to the ground. The ironclad truth was right in front of his eyes. For a moment, he didn't know how to explain himself. If he was wrong, were the directors of Cloud Realm Medical Academy wrong as well? This completely overturned his three views, but he had no way to refute them. He whipped his head towards Han Yunxi and saw Han Yunxi smiling. Suddenly angry, he shouted, Han Yunxi, tell me why. The Crown Prince is clearly pregnant, he's clearly pregnant. Perhaps he could have said these words before, but now that Emperor Tianhui had completely trusted Han Yunxi, saying them again was seeking death. What did it mean to cause trouble with the tongue? This was exactly what it meant to cause trouble with the tongue. Emperor Tianhui was already angry, but the words only made him even angrier. He was about to lose his temper when the Empress lost her temper and scolded, shameful thing, deceiving the world to gain fame and misdiagnosing someone wrongly. You still dare to quibble with irrefutable evidence. How could you diagnose a man giving birth? Han Konggan, if I don't kill you today, I'll be letting down all the grievances my Moa suffered over the past few years. Only then did the crazed Han Kongan calm down. He couldn't refute a single word, and as soon as he heard the word die, his mind grew even more blank. He didn't know what to do. Emperor Tianhui's cold eyes flashed with killing intent as he kicked the man. Han Kongan, you still don't know your wrongs at a time like this. You still dare to slander the crown prince. You really have guts to the heavens. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Someone come, take this swindler to the imperial prisons to await trial. Zhen wants to exterminate his 3 clans. Exterminate his 3 clans? Han Kongan's misdiagnosis of the illness had humiliated the crown prince and affected the imperial family's reputation. Just this crime alone was enough to exterminate his 3 clans. Moreover, this strange illness had dragged on for so many years, wasting so much of the crown prince's youth. Exterminating his 3 clans was letting Han Kongan off easy, but these 3 words were like 5 bolts of lightning to him. Han Yunxi, who'd been watching idly from the sidelines, suddenly stiffened as she sat up straight. Han Kongan gave a start before he howled, "Your Majesty, this commoner was wrong. This commoner knows his wrongs. Your Majesty, have mercy. Your Majesty, for the sake of Yunxi saving the crown prince, spare this commoner and the Han family. Your Majesty, have mercy. Esteemed Empress Dowager, esteemed Empress, for the sake of this commoner's many years of hard work, please spare this commoner this once." Han Kongan kowtowed with all his might, begging with all his might as he cried to the heavens and the earth. Unfortunately, the retainers quickly came to detain him. Emperor Tianhui's cold face was terrifyingly furious, showing no mercy whatsoever. At this moment, Han Kongan finally remembered that Han Yunxi was still his daughter. He threw himself at Han Yunxi's feet and cried out, "Yunxi, daughter, you're indebted to the crown prince. Save your father. Save the Han clan's 3 clans." Han Yunxi's eyes narrowed, a complicated look on her face. Although Han Kongan's diagnosis wasn't wrong and his conservative treatment was correct, Han Yunxi wasn't planning to help him. Leaving aside the young general's matter, Han Yunxi had no reason to save him as a father and even stabbed her in the back. All the sufferings she'd suffered since she was a child were enough to prove that Han Yunxi had no reason to save him. In her eyes, Han Kongan deserved it. But this matter involved the Han clan's 3 clans. Wiping out 3 clans meant wiping out the father's, mother's, and wife's clans. There were at least 100 people in total. Moreover, she and her mother's clansmen were implicated as well. What did Emperor Tianhui mean by this? Han Yunxi ignored Han Kongan and hesitated before looking towards Emperor Tianhui. She was about to speak when Emperor Tianhui spoke first. "You've rendered meritorious service by saving Tianmo, so Zhen won't implicate you. But Han Kongan's crimes cannot be forgiven. The Han clan must pay the price." Han Yunxi rose to pay her respects, but still opened her mouth to speak. "May your Majesty please reconsider. Although the Han clan's various wives and concubines, as well as her brothers and sisters, had all abused her, their crimes didn't warrant death. Moreover, there were still many innocent people in the Han clan's 3 clans. Although this matter started because of Han Kongan, she couldn't get away from it. She wasn't a saint, but she didn't want to be an executioner. She didn't want to be a great sinner of the Han clan. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.